high enough to be considered proficient in math and reading. Former President Barack Obama yesterday endorsed 260 candidates from across the nation in the upcoming November election, including several here in Wisconsin. Governor Scott Walker and Senate Majority Leader Scott Fitzgerald announced an extraordinary session of the Wisconsin legislature to vote on an incentive package for the Kimberly-Clark Corporation. And Election Day is 5 weeks from today. For more information on where to vote and to see a sample ballot, go to myvote.wi.gov. For Real Resistance Radio, I'm Steve Dawson.
The following program is a presentation of DC Communications, LLC. Warning, you are about to listen to the greatest radio show ever. And due to contractual obligations and to shield our airwaves' corporate licensees from any semblance of liability, responsibility, and gullibility, we must tell you the views represented on this show are not necessarily those of this station or its management. This radio show contains differing points of view on current political topics, and due to the nature of its contents, it should be heard by everyone. Thank you for listening.
3, 2, 1.
Now live from the heart of liberal Wisconsin, where the political party is just beginning, welcome to the Devil's Advocate Show. Best friends proving it's never personal, only politics.
Please allow me to introduce myself.
Now here are your hosts, Dom and Crute.
Welcome to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. Dominic, another tremendous Tuesday. How you doing, my little buddy?
Hey, man, better late than never. Here I am. I'm ready to roll, dude. There is so much going on today. Where are we going to start?
Well, let me start by introducing this very fine show. It's going to be spectacular, perhaps the greatest show ever. First and foremost, in the 4 o'clock hour, we've got the next Attorney General of the great state of Wisconsin, or at least the man I'd like to see be Attorney General. The current one, don't like him so much.
Yeah, he sucks. His name is Brad Schimmel. Never vote for that guy. He needs to go.
But our fine guest is Democrat Josh Kaul, and he will call in at 4:05 today. Also, our good buddy Scott Ross, Executive Director, One Wisconsin Now. Dominic, extraordinary session the Republicans are calling, but not for before the midterms.
What?
But an extraordinary session to give out some extra special corporate welfare in a lame duck session between Election Day and when the new Democrats, I assume, are in panel. The Republicans having a little extraordinary session for the benefit of Kimberly-Clark.
Nothing like showing your love for free market capitalism, like giving more taxpayer monies away to...
There was that year they paid $1. Also, Dom, there are some new educational figures out in the state of Wisconsin. A number of Wisconsin students deficient, at least according to the testing. Going to have a couple of guests to help us address this topic. They include our good buddy, Dr. Tim Slecker. He is the Dean of the School of Education at Edgewood College, and he's also the host of Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk right here on Real Resistance Radio every Saturday, 11 at noon. Dr. Tim joins us to get the happy hour started today, Dom. And then also Justin Morales. He is the Wisconsin State Director of American Federation for Children. AFC, as they're sometimes known. I can hear a few in the audience hissing right now. But we like Justin Morales, and, you know, we are going to talk about scoring, because it's not just the public schools being scored, but also the choice schools. Justin Morales also in the happy hour about 5:30 today. But, Dom, I got to tell you, man, the trolls have been hitting us hard.
The Republicans are losing their minds.
The haters on the social mediums, Tom, they're taking it very seriously. This whole Me Too-ness for males, they're quite worried, Tom, that they're going to be caught up in the Me Too riptide and taken off by a false accusation and drowned in a sea of what? Liberalness, Tom?
Perhaps, Crudy, and you gotta love it. You know, some of these folks who are the keyboard warriors, you know, never the phone warriors. You know, you can call anytime. All of our favorite trolls out there. It's toll free. It won't even cost you nothing.
I think he's talking to you, Dale.
844-967-2789.
Or maybe Mike Stanley. Who knows who Dom talks to?
We name names here on the Devil's Advocates, but here's the point. if your criticism of my believing Dr. Ford's testimony that she was assaulted by Kavanaugh, and for some reason you take objection to that because it's only a belief when I look at it from that perspective, but you believe Kavanaugh, and that is a fact?
Well, they believe it, Dom.
So it must be true, yeah.
I got a little piece to support this conversation. We'd like to hear from all our trolls. Once again, that toll-free number, 844-967-2789. We do not run from you, troll-like creatures. Here's the headline. The trauma for a man. Male fury and fear rises in GOP in defense of Kavanaugh. Philip Rucker, Robert Costa at the Washington Post. I'll go first. You know, my male privilege, Tom.
Your tall privilege.
My tall privilege. I claim it. The sexual assault allegations against Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh have sparked a wave of unbridled anger and anxiety from many Republican men who say they are in danger of being swept up by false accusers who are biased against them. From President Trump to his namesake son, Don Jr., to Senator Lindsey Graham. I didn't realize O was his middle name. It makes him seem Irish almost. Republican South Carolina, the howls of outrage crystallize a strong current of grievance within a party whose leadership is almost entirely white and overwhelmingly male, and which does not make a secret of its fear that demographic shifts and cultural convulsions could jeopardize its grip on power. This outbreak of male resentment now seems likely to play a defining role in the midterm elections just 5 weeks away, contrasting with a burst of enthusiasm among women, propelling Democratic candidates and inspired by the national hashtag #MeToo, reckoning over sexual assault and gender roles. I've got boys and I've got girls, and when I see what's going on right now, it's scary. Donald Trump Jr. It sounds much like the dad when I do the voice. A father of 5 small children said in an interview with the Daily Mail TV airing Monday, asked whether he was more worried about his sons or his daughters. Fredo Jr. said, right now, I'd say my sons.
Uh-huh.
The rallying cry for Kavanaugh's enraged plea of innocence before the Senate Judiciary Committee, which heard emotional testimony from Christy Blasey Ford that Kavanaugh sexually assaulted her at a house in suburban Maryland when he was 17 and she was 15. Going to get to some statistics in just a minute, Dom. Trump has defended Kavanaugh and said the accusations by Ford and 2 other women are unfair to the judge and his family. The president, who himself has denied claims of sexual assault by more than a dozen women, has repeatedly stood behind other accused men in positions of power, including former Senate candidate Roy Moore. You remember the pedophile from Alabama, that guy, Dom?
Oh, yeah.
The Alabama Republican was accused of several misconduct. Sexual. Perhaps it should be serial sexual misconduct with teenage girls. Here's another quote, Tom. The trauma for a man that never had any accusation, that never had a bad statement about him, Trump told reporters on Monday, sympathizing with Kavanaugh's experience. It's unfair to him at this point, what his wife is going through, what his beautiful children are going through, is not describable. Not by you with your limited vocabulary.
He's got the best words.
Why don't you take it forward, Dom?
Veteran GOP pollster Frank Lund said that among Republicans, there is a feeling of being guilty until proven innocent. In this era of Me Too, there are a lot of men and some women who believe that justice no longer exists in America, that the accusation is enough to destroy someone's career and someone's life. That wasn't manifesting itself politically until late last week.
I don't recall any accusations against Barack Obama, Dom.
Yeah.
8 years, no sexual misconduct allegations against our former president.
And what about Merrick Garland or the guy who took his spot? Were there sexual allegations against either of them?
Neil Gorsuch?
No.
Not that I heard. John
No.
Roberts seemingly made it onto the courts without a hell of a lot of trouble.
Well, that's strange. I'll continue. Kavanaugh's defenders, reflecting widespread feelings among conservatives nationally, are furious about what they see as a broad brush approach to sexual misconduct allegations. They say the federal judge is being caught in a Me Too riptide and unfairly grouped with serial predators such as entertainer Bill Cosby, who's been accused of sexual assault or harassment by more than 60 women and was sentenced last week to 3 to 10 years in prison for drugging and assaulting one of them. I think you're trying to portray him as a stumbling, bumbling, drunk gang rapist who during high school and college was Bill Cosby, Graham said Sunday to host George Stephanopoulos on ABC's This Week. Public opinion on Kavanaugh breaks down along gender lines. Women oppose his confirmation 55% to 37%, while men support it 49 to 40, according to a Quinnipiac University poll released Monday. The survey found that 48% of American voters most believe Ford, while 41% most believe Kavanaugh.
That's the Trump base, right?
In the 2016 election, Trump won 53% of men to Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton's 41%, and he has sought to galvanize these supporters with what he calls a Democratic con job on his hand-picked Supreme Court nominee. The right has come alive with impassioned defenses of Kavanaugh in recent days. Talk radio bum Rush Limbaugh, whose program for years has largely defended the GOP white male ID, has unleashed a torrent of criticism on the air, such as his riff last week on militant feminism. Here's a quote from Limbaugh. "These women are angry. Something has happened to them in their lives, and their rage and anger, they take it out now on the country or on all men or men in the powerful majority, which is white Christian men, and so forth," unquote. Conservative commentator Ann Coulter bemoaned the snickering at white men in her syndicated column last week and insisted there's never been a more pacific, less rapey culture than the white male of Western European descent. Can we please, for the love of God, drop the painfully trite, mind-numbing cliche about white men as if somehow their whiteness makes evil even eviler, Coulter wrote, Crute.
Rep. Steve King, Republican from Iowa, tweeted after the Kavanaugh hearing that old white men are relentlessly being racially and generationally profiled by the, air quotes, tolerant left, and that media outlets have, and here's another quote, Tom, almost universally profiled and stigmatized Republican senators. Jennifer Palmieri, once a guest on this program, Tom, a Democratic strategist and author of Dear Madam President, a book about reimagining women in leadership roles, said the nation's fast-changing culture can be unsettling and indeed frightening to men in power. A lot of white men don't know what it's like to feel threatened, powerless, and frustrated, said Palmieri, former communications director for the Clinton campaign. As we go through the reckoning of this lopsided power balance, there's going to be a lot more of this.
Welcome to the party, pal.
Are you welcoming callers? 844-967-2789.
No, the trolls are silent right now. Please keep going.
The trolls, you're welcome here, trolls. The Republican Party has long identified with more traditional white males such as former presidents Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, but strategists say that is now turning towards more towards combative male candidates in the mold of Trump, with allegations of misconduct interpreted by many within the party not as liabilities, but as unfair political attacks. We're a party of angry, older white men at a time when our country is going through tremendous demographic change, Republican strategist John Weaver said, predicting that the GOP will suffer the consequences in future elections. The sounds and images of, images. What's wrong with this white man? I can't read. The sounds and images of angry men could have a lasting impact on the Republican brand. Kavanaugh's pitch testimony has quickly gone from must-see live television to cultural touchstone on NBC's Saturday Night Live over the weekend. Actor Matt Damon portrayed Kavanaugh in the show's opening sketch as a beer-guzzling frat boy whose hero was Clint Eastwood's character in Gran Torino, a 2008 film about the older white men who has contempt for aspects of diversity. The shift in political gravity for Republicans helps explain the searing denouncement by Graham in last week's Senate hearing. His extraordinary diatribe, reenacted on SNL by a scowling Kate McKinnon, was in essence a defense of men who had been stewing about the charges against Kavanaugh. I know I'm a single white male from South Carolina, and I'm told I should shut up, but I will not shut up if that's okay. Graham said at the hearing, adding that the experience had been hell for Kavanaugh and the most unethical sham since I've been in politics. Those remarks won Graham a rush of praise from men in solidly Republican state and from conservative activists nationally. People say, Lindsay said what I was thinking, said Caton Dawson, a former South Carolina Republican Party chairman and Graham ally. That's powerful, and that's all over the country. It's become a fairness issue to the people in the hinterlands. They don't think Kavanaugh has been treated fairly.
Aww.
Poor snowflakes, Dad.
Yeah. Hey, trolls, Republicans, it's not a trial. It's not a trial. It's a job interview. And when you cry at a job interview and you yell at a job interview and you tell your potential employers how much you love beer, you may not be the right person for the U.S. Supreme Court.
Don't we all like beer?
I love beer.
I like beer. Come back with us. We are the Devil's Advocates. You are welcome here, especially you righty trolls. Come defend yourselves at 844-967-2789. With that look, Dom absolutely thinks you're deplorable.
Now, who's responsible for this unwarranted attack on my person? Now, let's hear your side of the story, sister.
American women deserve better, and American women are here to fight back.
Here in the Badger State, we have our own expressions. When we're looking to go on vacation, we state, well, let's go up north. Hello, this is Tom Bennett, President of Teamsters Local 200. Here in the Badger State, we also have another expression, union yes. The strength of the labor movement depends on elected officials here in Wisconsin and Washington, D.C. that support the values of working families that raise the standards for all. Give us a call at Teamsters Local 200 at 414-771-6363 or visit our website at www.teamsterslocal200.com or on Facebook at Teamsters Local 200. Be engaged.
Do you own a rental property, or would you like to partner with a rental investment team? Call the pros you can trust at CCL Management. Rental expertise second to none, a general contractor on staff to direct repairs and improvements, and real estate brokerage services tailored to the small investor. If you're ready to invest in rental property or just need professionals to manage your real estate portfolio, call us, CCL Management, at 608-833-0009 or visit us on the web at cclmanagement.com.
Whoa.
The moment my son saw a redwood tree.
It's huge!
Is the moment I knew that for him,
You can't even see the top of that thing.
even the sky has no limit.
There are some moments only the forest can inspire. Find yours at discovertheforest.org. Learn about forests near you and discover cool things to do when you go. Your moment is out there. Find it at discovertheforest.org.
Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
The Forum, hosted by Sherwin Hughes, exclusively on Real Resistance Radio. Call in live at 844-967-2789 and give your thoughts, feelings, and opinions on local and national topics. Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. until 11 a.m. It will not be what you expect to hear, but we will definitely give you what you need to know. That's The Forum, hosted by Sherwin Hughes on Real Resistance Radio. Always streaming live on realresistanceradio.com.
The Devil's Advocates. Rock and roll political commentary in a top 40 world.
Sometimes not rock and roll, but we are the Devil's Advocates, and this is Real Resistance Radio. We're on Twitter at Devil Radio. We're streaming on YouTube and Facebook, and we got 6 phone lines open for all you righty trolls all concerned about how tough it is to be a white man in this country. 844-967-2789. We are here for you. Crudy, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, perhaps our righty troll's busy jamming out to the UB40. The first and probably only time that song uniquely will be played on this broadcast. A little red, red wine. We'll get to that in a minute, Don, but what about the conclusion of the Washington Post piece?
Philip Rucker and Robert Costa, I'll bring it home, Crudy. Inside the conservative movement and on its fringes, an intense discussion has long been underway about gender and the perceived assault on men. The war on men, we've heard Grothman talk about that.
I thought it was a war on Christmas.
Fox News commentator Ben Shapiro, who hosts a popular podcast and TV program, has been one of the higher-profile voices, sharply criticizing a culture where he sees men out in the cold and searching for meaning. The age of emasculation cannot last, Shapiro has written. It will eventually boil over into violence, sink away into irrelevance, or return to traditional mores. Beyond Shapiro, University of Toronto clinical psychologist Jordan Peterson has drawn thousands of young conservative men to his lectures across the United States, railing against the effects of feminism and urging men to speak up for themselves. Boys are suffering in the modern world, he has told his followers. On Reddit, a hugely popular online discussion website, hordes of men, many of them libertarian or Republican, weigh in on forums focused on topics such as men's rights and men's liberation. Sorry.
Dom, you've always been a men's liber.
Yeah, sure. I'm all about men's rights. How about human rights? How about that? You kidding me? Let me just finish this and we'll mock it. Some conservative women have also joined the chorus of outrage over what they see as encroachment of liberal feminism into American life. I disagree with Senator Mazie Hirono, who said men should just shut up. Men deserve to be listened to, said attorney Helgi Walker, a longtime friend of Kavanaugh, who worked with him in the White House. Due process means listening to everybody. It doesn't mean men are totally invalidated.
I feel totally invalidated, Dom.
Really? I mean, so it's tough for the men. It's a
no,
problem
I don't find
for
it
the
to
men.
be particularly tough for men out here in the world. Even us white men.
You feel okay about speaking your mind, Crudy? You don't feel like you're going to get assaulted for saying something by those liberal feminist women?
Well, Dom, I will make a confession. There was an accusation leveled against me. And I denied. But turns out I just blacked out for a little bit, and I actually did it, Dom.
So it's not a grand feminist liberal conspiracy, Crute?
You're going to have to ask Fancy Brian, but I got him locked up on an NDA. We never got around to telling you why Red Red Wine, how a 1980s reggae pop band got dragged into the Kavanaugh drama. You know, UB40, Dom. Apparently, Kavanaugh rocked the night away at a UB40 concert.
He should be disqualified for serving on the U.S. Supreme Court for just going to that concert.
Just going to the UB40? Well, then you're not going to want to hear about the bar fight.
What?
That happened after the UB40 concert. You know, because UB40 gets them all riled up, Tom.
Mosh pit.
You know, I used to DJ in the clubs. I used to have to warn them when Paradise City was coming on. The fights would break out. The bouncers would have to clear the dance floor when Paradise City. The moshing, the slamming. Never had that problem after I played Red Red Wine. 844-967-2789. Sounds good. I might have some Red Red Wine right now.
What'd you do?
It's so bad!
Sinner.
Join the resistance against dirty carpets. Call Zero Res Madison today for our summer special. Clean and sanitize 3 rooms for only $139. Call 608-848-9000 or schedule online at ZeroResMadison.com. Zero Res, spell it forward or backward, it's the right way to clean.
Donna from Louisiana. The storm just hit, and we went from donating to the food bank to needing it.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Looking for a job worth talking about? Teaching is creative, collaborative, and intellectually challenging. See why teachers have better work stories at teachdfw.org and learn more about becoming a teacher. Brought to you by Teach and the Ad Council.
5 your local single-source IT solutions provider. Specializing in cloud technology, consulting, servers, networks, and hosting. We manage your IT so you can focus on running your business. Enjoy technology. Enjoy 59s.com.
It's hard to dream when you're fighting for 15. This is Pizza Box Mike for Wisconsin's Resistance Radio. Check out fightfor15.org to get involved in the fight for 15.
My name is Tom Palzowitz. I'm a Navy veteran and small business owner running to bring responsible leadership back to Wisconsin's 5th Congressional District. Opponent, 40-year incumbent Jim Sensenbrenner, has been a Trump administration rubber stamp who is clearly out of touch with the hardworking families of Wisconsin. I'm running to restore the American dream for all of us, and I need your help to get America back on the right path. Visit tomforwi.com to learn more and to make a contribution today. I'm Tom Palzowitz, and I approve this message.
On marijuana, unfortunately, as a public health issue and a public safety issue, I've opposed that.
Dr. Sanjay Gupta, how can medical marijuana help those addicted to opioids?
There's three big things. There's clear consensus now that cannabis can treat pain. That is not an opinion. That is a consensus conclusion by big scientific bodies like the National Academy of Science. We also know that it can help treat the withdrawal symptoms of opioids. People, they don't want to be on it anymore. They want to quit, but they develop the terrible withdrawal symptoms. And now we have evidence that it can actually help heal the part of the brain that is diseased in someone who's an opioid addict. If you had to start from scratch and design a substance to help lead us out of the opioid epidemic, like in a lab, it would probably look very much like cannabis.
Call Governor Scott Walker at 608-266-1212. Tell him good people do smoke marijuana. This message was paid for by the People for People Corporation. Donate online at p4ppc.org, p4ppc.org.
We got Mark Pocan live via phone. Mark, does Paul Ryan hate poor people?
Oh, he hates poor people and middle-class people. I mean, I think when he was probably 5 years old playing with Play-Doh, trying to, adjust the taxes on Play-Doh. So, to be fair, I think he's doing what he always said he was going to do. It's just no one actually believed he was either that cruel, evil, or dumb to do it.
The Devil's Advocates, weekday afternoons on 1510 a.m., Wisconsin's Resistance Radio.
For Real Resistance Radio, my name is Keith Gosted. Democratic candidate for governor Tony Evers introduced a new plan for Wisconsin yesterday called Government for Us. Evers said he wants to make state officials more accountable to voters and called for establishing an inspector general to serve as a watchdog for state government. Evers also said he wants to implement nonpartisan redistricting and automatically register people to vote when they turn 18 or when they move to Wisconsin. Evers said he wants a nonpartisan commission to draw congressional and legislative districts with no consideration for the party affiliation of the voters or who won in previous elections. Tuesday, cloudy, highs around 60. Tonight, mostly cloudy, lows in the upper 50s. Wednesday, mostly cloudy with a slight chance of rain, highs in the upper 70s. Thursday, sunshine, highs in the upper 50s. For Real Resistance Radio, I'm Keith Gosted.
The Devil's Advocates. We drink when we toast when we drink.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates radio show. We've got some breaking news at the New York Times. Do we have callers, Tom?
We do.
Well, let's start with the callers and then perhaps the headline. Trump engaged in suspect tax schemes as he reaped riches from his father. And we're talking about Donald Trump and Fred Trump, the grandfather, or the godfather as the case may be. But Dom, first the phones, 844-967-2789. Your contributions. Welcome here, even trolls.
Ron from San Diego, you are up. Thanks for calling, Ron. What do you got today?
Hey, Ron.
Hey, how are you guys?
Excellent.
Good, sir.
Hey, I like beer. Do you like beer?
Love beer.
I love beer.
I love beer. Everybody loves beer. I drink beer. You drink beer. Brian drinks beer. I mean, sometimes I drink a lot of beer. Sometimes I drink too much beer. But I love beer. Even now I love beer, Ron.
Girls even love beer.
Boys love beer. Girls love beer. My classmates love beer.
I watched all 8 hours of this damn thing with my wife. We had nothing else to do but fold laundry and watch the shit show. Hey,
Sorry about that, Ron.
Keep it clean, Ron.
We certainly appreciate your input. 844-967-2789. Crudy, what's the breaking news?
Well, the breaking news at the New York Times. I'm just going to read from the piece. Now, this one is quite a lengthy expose. Dom, you pointed out, like 38 pages. So pour yourself some red wine, sit down in a comfy chair, And I'll at least get you started, so you got someplace to start from later this evening when you get home. The president has long sold himself as a self-made billionaire, but a Times investigation found that he received at least $413 million in today's dollars from his father's real estate empire, much of it through tax dodges in the 1990s. That's the subheadline, Dom. David Barstow, Susan Craig, and Russ Bittner at the New York Times. President Trump participated in dubious tax schemes during the 1990s, including instances of outright fraud that greatly increased the fortune he received from his parents. An investigation by the New York Times has found. Free the taxes. No wonder why the man doesn't want to put his taxes out there. Mr. Trump won the presidency proclaiming himself a self-made billionaire, and he has long insisted that his father, the legendary New York City builder Fred C. Trump, provided almost no financial help. But the Times investigation, based on a vast trove of confidential tax returns and financial records, reveals that Mr. Trump received the equivalent today of at least $413 million from his father's real estate empire, starting when he was a toddler and continuing to this day. Much of this money came to Mr. Trump because he helped his parents dodge taxes. He and his siblings set up a sham corporation to disguise millions of dollars in gifts from their parents, records and interviews show. Records indicate that Mr. Trump helped his father take improper tax deductions worth millions more. He also helped formulate a strategy to undervalue his parents' real estate holdings by hundreds of millions of dollars on tax returns, sharply reducing the tax bill when those properties were transferred to him and his siblings. These maneuvers met with little resistance from the Internal Revenue Service, the Times found. The president's parents, Fred and Mary Trump, transferred well over $1 billion with a B dollars in wealth to their children, which could have produced a tax bill of at least $550 million under the 55% tax rate then imposed on gifts and inheritances. The Trumps paid a total of $52.2 million, or about 5%. Tax records show, little buddy.
Oh, damn. That's a hell of a deal. I'll bring it home a little bit here, Crudy, and we'll get to your calls.
You're going to get the next 37 and a half pages for me?
Okay, not so much home. We'll continue it. The New York Times, our telephone number, 844-967-2789. The president declined repeated requests over several weeks to comment for this article, but a lawyer for Mr. Trump, Charles J. Harder, provided a written statement on Monday, one day after the Times sent a detailed description of its finding. And here's a quote. The New York Times allegation of fraud and tax evasion are 100% false and highly defamatory, Mr. Harder said. There was no fraud or tax evasion by anyone. The facts upon which the Times bases its false allegations are extremely inaccurate.
Fake news!
Mr. Harder sought to distance Mr. Trump from the tax strategies used by his family, saying the president had delegated those tasks to relatives and tax professionals. Another quote, President Trump had virtually no involvement whatsoever in these matters. The affairs were handled by other Trump family members who were not experts themselves and therefore relied entirely upon the aforementioned licensed professionals to ensure full compliance with the law. The president's brother, Robert Trump, issued a statement on behalf of the Trump family. Our dear father, Fred C. Trump, passed away in June of 1999. Our beloved mother, Mary Ann Trump, passed away in August of 2000. All appropriate gift and estate tax returns were filed, and the required taxes were paid. Our father's estate was closed in 2001 by both the IRS and the New York State tax authorities, and my mother's estate was closed in 2004. Our father has no other comment, our family has no other comment on these matters.
Yeah, the dead father's not saying much.
Well, he doesn't have to. Here, Dad, sign this. You'll be dead in a few years anyway. And by the time this goes through, no statute of limitations for the rest of us. But I continue. Our family has no other comment on these matters that happened some 20 years ago and would appreciate your respecting the privacy of our deceased parents. May God rest their souls.
Really? Bringing God and privacy into this? They're dead. They don't mind. It's not like anyone's digging up their graves for the tax records.
The Times findings raise new questions about Trump's refusal to release his income tax returns, breaking with decades of practice by past presidents. According to tax experts, it is unlikely that Mr. Trump would be vulnerable to criminal prosecution for helping his parents evade taxes because the acts happened too long ago and they are past the statute of limitations. There is no time limit, however, on civil fines for tax fraud, Crute.
The findings are based on interviews with Fred Trump's former employees and advisors and more than 100,000 pages of documents describing the inner workings and immense profitability of his empire. They include documents culled from public sources, mortgages and deeds, probate records, financial disclosure reports, regulatory records, and civil court files. The investigation also draws on tens of thousands of pages of confidential records, bank statements, financial audits, accounting ledgers, cash disbursement reports, invoices, and canceled checks. You know, all fake news, them. Most notably, the documents include more than 200 tax returns from the old man Fred Trump, his companies, and various Trump partnerships and trusts, while the records do not include the president's personal tax returns and reveal little about his recent business dealings at home and abroad. Dozens of corporate partnership and trust tax returns offer the first public accounting of income he received for decades from various family enterprises. What emerges from this body of evidence is a financial biography of the 45th president, fundamentally at odds with the story Mr. Trump has sold in his books, his TV shows, and his political life. In Mr. Trump's version of how he got rich, he was the master deal maker who broke free of his father's tiny outer borough operation and parlayed a single $1 million loan from his father. I had to pay it back with interest. Into a $10 billion empire that would slap the Trump name on hotels, high-rises, casinos, airlines, golf courses, the world over. Let's not forget steaks,
vodka,
fraudulent universities. I'll skip throwing in my editorial. I'll just read a little farther. In Mr. Trump's version, it was always his guts and gumption that overcame setbacks. Fred Trump was simply a cheerleader. I built what I built myself. Mr. Trump has said a narrative that has long amplified by often credulous coverage from news organizations, including The Times, certainly a handful of journalists and biographers, notably Wayne Barrett, Gwenda Blair, David Clay Johnston, Timothy O'Brien, have challenged his story, especially the claim of being worth $10 billion. They describe how Mr. Trump piggybacked off his father's banking connections to gain a foothold in the Manhattan real estate. They poked holes in his go-to talking point about the $1 million loan, citing evidence that he actually got $14 million. They told how Fred Trump once helped his sons make a bond payment on an Atlantic City casino by buying $3.5 million in casino chips.
Mm-hmm.
Did it at the Taj Mahal. It's in the Trump Revealed book. So you go in, you pay cash, $3.5 million for poker chips, and you never cash them in. Effectively, you gave your son, through illegal means, a no-interest gift.
Well, you got a problem with that?
Apparently, the reporters at the Times do. I'll read just a little farther down. We'll take our next break. But the Times investigation of the Trump family finances is unprecedented in scope and precision, offering the first comprehensive look at the inherited fortune and tax dodges that guaranteed Donald Trump a gilded life. The reporting makes clear in every era of Mr. Trump's life, his finances were deeply intertwined with and depended on his father's wealth. By the age 3, Mr. Trump was earning $200,000 a year in today's dollars from his father's empire. He was a millionaire by age 8. By the time he was 17, his father had given him part ownership of a 52-unit apartment building. Soon after Mr. Trump graduated from college, he was receiving the equivalent of $1 million a year from his father. The money increased with the years to more than $5 million annually in his 40s and 50s. I mean, are you kidding me? This guy's getting an allowance from daddy into his 50s. One more paragraph. Fred Trump's real estate empire was not just scores of apartment buildings. It was also a mountain of cash, tens of millions of dollars in profits building up inside his businesses. Banking records show in one 6-year span from 1988 to 1993, Fred Trump reported $109 million in total income, now equivalent to over $200 million. It was not unusual for tens of millions in treasury bills and certificates of deposit to flow through his personal bank account each month. We are the Devil's Advocates. I wish I had a rich daddy come back
Me
with
too,
us.
man. $200,000 by the time you're 3 a year? Wow.
844-967-2789. Rich kids allowed here.
I want to release my tax returns, but I can't release it while I'm under an audit.
Nobody knows more about taxes than I do.
I alone can fix it. Does that make sense? Did you ask me a question?
We don't need to imagine the challenges our state faces. We live them every day. This is former State Representative Mandela Barnes. I'm running to be your next Lieutenant Governor. And whether it's more access to affordable health care, or clean water, or better jobs, or wanting the best schools for our kids, there's only one candidate for governor who will get results: Tony Evers. That's what Tony's done as a teacher and as state superintendent of public schools. I've seen Tony's character and his passion to do what's right for kids. I've seen Tony Evers listen to the concerns and problems of people around the state, and I've worked with him to find solutions to those problems. Isn't that what we need? 8 years is enough of Scott Walker and his failed politics of division. We need a governor who cares about all of us. We need a governor who's concerned about the next generation, not just the next election. It's time for a change. That's why Tony for Wisconsin paid for this ad.
Ever worry that the anonymous millionaires are setting the agenda for our community with little or no accountability? I do. That's why I joined Citizen Action Organizing Co-op. My fellow members and I want to build a powerful and lasting progressive movement. Together, we can help determine the agenda in our own communities. Then we work with professional organizers and a team of leading strategists to make that agenda happen. We're working on health care, economic justice, child poverty, electing progressive candidates, and more. And our Radioactive campaign supports this station and the Resistance Radio Network. So, won't you come help us build a movement?
Become a member of the Citizen Action Organizing Co-op. Go to citizenactionwi.org.
60% of the time, they're right every time. Dom and Cruz are the Devil's Advocates.
And we are back. Thank you for listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show on Real Resistance Radio, streaming live on YouTube and Facebook. We're on Twitter at Devil Radio. You know, always join the party at the party line, 844-967-2789.
Dominic, digging deep in the New York Times expose, 38 pages of Trump tax fraud. You know, and I got to say, man, it would be great to have a daddy that loved me as much as apparently Fred Trump loved his son. Loved tax avoidance. I mean, and of course, Donald Trump gets to set his own narrative in life. He's, you know, the master illusionist, if you will, Dom. But it would seem that Daddy was paying this man an allowance into his 40s and
come on.
50s, talking about millions of dollars a year.
You're assuming that he wasn't providing any sort of services for that money, Crudy. I mean, by the time you're 3 years old, you're probably picking up your own Cheerios off the floor. You know, you're putting your toys away. That certainly earns $200,000 a year in today's dollars, doesn't it?
My kids are not going to get nearly that sort of allowance. I'm just saying.
I'm just saying.
I guess I chose the wrong industry, Dom.
Yeah, you weren't born to a rich daddy. What are you thinking?
I'm sure Donald Trump did work very hard. Perhaps you can continue this New York Times expose for the audience.
Fred Trump was relentless and creative in finding ways to channel his wealth to his children. He made Donald not just his salaried employee, but also his property manager, landlord, banker, and consultant. He gave him loan after loan, many never repaid. He provided money for his car, money for his employees, money to buy stocks, money for his first Manhattan offices, and money to renovate those offices. He gave him 3 trust funds. He gave him shares in multiple partnerships. He gave him a $10,000 Christmas checks. He gave him laundry revenue from his buildings. Much of his giving was structured to sidestep gift and inheritance taxes using the methods tax experts described to the Times as improper or possibly illegal. Although Fred Trump became wealthy with help from federal housing subsidies, he insisted it was manifestly unfair for the government to tax his fortune as it passed to his children. When he was in his 80s and beginning to slide into dementia, evading gift and estate taxes became a family affair, with Donald Trump playing a crucial role, interviews and newly obtained documents show. The line between legal tax avoidance and illegal tax evasion, let me say that again. The line between legal tax avoidance and illegal tax evasion is
Now, I do the former. The president apparently does the latter, Don.
It's often murky, and it is constantly being stretched by inventive tax lawyers. There's no shortage of clever tax avoidance tricks that have been blessed by either the courts or the IRS itself. The richest Americans almost never pay anything close to full freight, but tax experts briefed on the Times findings said the Trumps appear to have done more than exploit legal loopholes. They said the conduct described here represents a pattern of deception and obfuscation, particularly about the value of Fred Trump's real estate that repeatedly prevented the IRS from taxing large transfers of wealth to his children. The theme I see here through all this is valuations. They play around with the valuation in extreme ways, said Lee Ford Tritt, a University of Florida law professor and a leading expert in gift and estate tax law. There are dramatic fluctuations depending on their purpose. The manipulation of values to evade taxes was central to one of the most important financial events in Donald Trump's life. In an episode never before revealed, Mr. Trump and his siblings gained ownership of most of their father's empire on November 22nd, 1977, a year and a half before Fred Trump's death. Critical to the complex transaction was the value put on the real estate. The lower the value, the lower the gift taxes. The Trumps dodged hundreds of millions in gift taxes by submitting tax returns that grossly undervalued the properties, claiming they were worth just $41.4 million. Curdy, the same set of buildings would be sold off over the next decade for more than 16 times that amount.
The most overt fraud was All County Building Supply and Maintenance, a company formed by the Trump family in 1992. All County's ostensible purpose was to be the purchasing agent for Fred Trump's buildings, buying everything from boilers to cleaning supplies. It did no such thing, records and interviews show. Instead, All County siphoned millions of dollars from Fred Trump's empire by simply marking up purchases already made by his employees. Those millions, effectively untaxed gifts, then flowed to All County's owners, Donald Trump and his siblings, and a cousin. Fred Trump then used the padded All County receipts to justify bigger rent increases for thousands of tenants. It's a smooth, swell, crooked deal. All told, the Times documented 295 streams of revenue that Fred Trump created over 5 decades to enrich his son. In most cases, his 4 other children benefited equally, but over time, as Donald Trump careened from one financial disaster to the next, his father found ways to give him substantially more money, records show. Even so, in 1990, according to previously secret depositions, Mr. Trump tried to have his father's will rewritten in a way that Fred Trump, alarmed and angered, feared could result in his empire being used to bail out his son's failing businesses. Of course, the story of how Donald Trump got rich cannot be reduced to handouts from his father. Before he'd become president, his singular achievement was building the brand Donald J. Trump, self-made billionaire, a brand so potent it generated hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue through TV shows, books, and licensing deals. Constructing that image required more than Fred Trump's money. Just as important were his son's pre-natural marketing skills and always be closing competitive hustle. While Fred Trump helped finance the accoutrements of wealth, Donald Trump, master self-promoter, spun them into a seductive narrative. He finds it very sexy, Dom. Fred Trump's money, for example, helped build Trump Tower, the talisman of privilege that established his son as a major player in New York. But Donald Trump recognized and exploited the iconic power of Trump Tower as the primary stage for both The Apprentice and his presidential campaign. The biggest payday he ever got from his father came long after Fred Trump's death. It happened quietly without the usual Trumpian news conference on May 4, 2004, when Mr. Trump and his siblings sold off the empire their father had spent 70 years assembling with the dream that it would never leave his family. Donald Trump's cut, $173 million, or $236 million in today's dollars, Dom. Not a bad payday for cashing out Dad's equity.
844-967-2789. That's a breaking news piece from the New York Times. Let's get Mark in here. 844-967-2789. Mark from the Sack, you're up. Thanks for calling, man. What do you got?
Bring the trolls. The trolls are just cowardly. They're not going to come on. I mean that you challenge them all the time, and they never do. I mean that it's just remarkable.
They mostly get paid to troll people on social media. I think they are interns or employees of the Republican Party of the state of Wisconsin, primarily, Mark. But, everybody needs a job, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's a good gig if you can get it.
You got anything else for us today, Mark? Any comments on Donald Trump, this new revealing piece from the New York Times? I mean, did you know Donald Trump was getting $200,000 a year at 3 years old?
It's not unsurprising. I didn't know it, but I am unsurprised.
That's a lot of sugar smacks, Mark.
Right, I can buy all sorts of toffee with that.
Yep, it's unsurprising. I mean that he's been a fake since, ever since I've read about him. I always figured he was kind of a phony, but
well, I can't even fathom how enabling, and I use the word in its worst context, how enabling it must be to be a millionaire by 8 years old. I mean, when you come from that, and I appreciate your call, Mark, but when you come from that sort of material wealth, and when the old man so clearly favors the son, right? Wants this boy not to be the F up that he's apparently,
right?
Well on his way to being.
When the lessons of life are passed along because or miss you because you're bailed out by your father because of the wealth of the family, well, you wonder why this guy doesn't have any empathy for anybody else.
Well, he is the prodigal son, and I heard recently he involved his prodigal son, no, not Fredo, but Eric, to try and do the Stormy payoff. Did you read that?
I saw some of that, yeah.
We got such a big show. I don't know if we got any more time for Trump trash today, but we do have fine guests in the 4 o'clock hour, including Josh Kaul. He is a Democrat. He is candidate for Wisconsin Attorney General. Also, Scott Ross, Executive Director, One Wisconsin. Now, come back with us. Hour 2, it's a big, fat, rich Hour 2 with fine guests. And, of course, you on the phones as well. 844-967-2789. Doesn't cost you nothing. Trump style.
Daddy, can I go with you? I said, yes, you can.
To conceal the source of money as by channeling it through an intermediary.
You're the best son money can buy.
Brad Zog, owner of Zero Res Madison. Brad, why should people use Zero Res Madison?
Why wouldn't you clean your carpets like this? We've got a patented system. We also do another step that most people don't do. We have a double rotating brush machine that we use when we pre-treat the carpet. So this helps dig up any of that stuff that's deeper in your carpet that the vacuum doesn't get. We're going to provide that intermediary step before we clean with our empowered water.
Call Zero Res today, 608-848-9000. Zero Res. Spell it forward or backward. It's the right way to clean.
Hi, this is Demi, pharmacist at Hyatt, locally owned pharmacy in the community of Milwaukee. Simplifying lives, one prescription at a time is our goal. Do free delivery of your medications to your home and at work. All your meds are brought together in one convenient dosage package individualized to your medication needs. We set up a house call with a licensed pharmacist to assist with medication management. We accept all insurance plans. To learn more about Hyatt, visit our website, HAYATRX.com.
You are listening to Real Resistance Radio, WRRD 1510 AM Waukesha and WTTN 1580 AM Columbus. Always streaming at realresistanceradio.com.
Release or not, health crisis. I'm Mike Moss. The latest Senate battle over the Brett Kavanaugh Supreme Court nomination is over whether to release to the public the FBI report into accusations of sexual assault. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell.
We'll get an FBI report soon. It'll be made available to each senator, and only senators will be allowed to look at it, and that's the way these reports are always handled.
But Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer argues otherwise.
There's a growing consensus in the Senate that when the FBI's investigation is complete, the findings should be released publicly, with any personal information redacted. Why are our Republican colleagues so afraid of making this public?
The president says he would find it disqualifying if it's determined in the report Kavanaugh lied to Congress.
I don't think you should lie to Congress, and there have been a lot of people over the last year that have lied to Congress, and to me that would not be acceptable.
4 men linked to a white supremacist group have been charged with federal crimes at the deadly Unite the Right white nationalist rally last year in Charlottesville, Virginia. The FBI's Tom Chadwick says they face 10 years in jail for their violent behavior.
Their actions were not only reprehensible, but they were in violation of federal law. These arrests serve to deter anyone from engaging in similar nefarious conduct.
Nearly half of women and 1/3 of men over the age of 45 will develop Parkinson's, dementia, or stroke during their lifetime. The global costs are estimated to be 2% of the annual world GDP. Amazon's hourly workers are getting a raise to $15 an hour starting next month. Company says the national minimum wage should be raised from $7.25. On Wall Street, the Dow closed up 122 points, S&P down 1.
Have you outgrown your house? Are you sick of apartment living? Not ready to buy but know you need to move? Hi folks, this is Tom Hartman for CCL Management in Middleton. You should consider moving up to one of the finer rental homes CCL Management represents. Unique houses and condos, always clean, most are pet friendly. Visit cclmanagement.com today to find your new home. CCL Management, Dane County's premier leasing and property management company.
Call CCL Management at 833-0009. That's 833-0009 or visit cclmanagement.com today.
Tune in to Real Resistance Radio. Start your weekday off with the Earl Ingram Show from 6 to 8 a.m. Next, it's The Forum with Sherwin Hughes from 8 to 11. Then from 11 to 2, it's the Tom Hartman Program. At 2 o'clock, it's the Brian Kelly Show. Then from 3 to 6, it's the Devil's Advocates. Mandatory listening. Always streaming at realresistanceradio.com.
848. The Trump administration says a little bit of radiation is good for you, like a little bit of sunlight, as it tries to weaken rules regarding radiation. Correspondent John Stolnis has more.
According to an online set of guidance that was revised in July, the EPA says exposure to 100 millisieverts usually results in no harmful health effects because radiation below those levels is a minor contributor to our overall cancer risk. The administration says weakening regulations would save U.S. companies billions of dollars. Critics say the proposed change could lead to higher levels of exposure for workers at nuclear installations and oil and gas drilling sites, medical workers doing X-ray and CT scans, and people who live next to Superfund sites. John Stolnis, Washington.
A new NASA-funded study reveals exposure to space radiation on long trips like a voyage to Mars could permanently harm astronauts and lead to stomach and colon cancer. They found space radiation very dangerous.
5/9, your local single-source IT solutions provider. Specializing in cloud technology, consulting, servers, networks, and hosting. We manage your IT so you can focus on running your business. Enjoy technology. Enjoy 59s.com.
Steven.
Who said that?
Me, down here.
Ugh, what are you, a yellow booger?
I'm a banana slug, Steven.
What are you doing in my room?
I'm your sense of adventure. It's been a long time since we've had an adventure in the forest.
Mom took me to the forest last year.
I'm a slug, Steven. It took me a long time to get here.
You're right. I should get out.
Yeah, the forest is not that far away.
Hey, Mom!
Come to the forest where the more adventurous you lives. Check out discovertheforest.org for cool places nearby. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
I'm jumping in with my clothes on.
Most party fouls are pretty dumb, but if you decide to drink and drive underage, you could lose your license and your freedom. Learn more at ultimatepartyfoul.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
For Real Resistance Radio, my name is Keith Gostad. Here are your headlines for October 2nd. The Brewers beat the Cubs at Wrigley Field yesterday 3-1 in a Game 163 showdown. With that victory, the Brewers claimed the National League Central title. Several schools that are part of the University of Wisconsin system are struggling due to declines in enrollment and state budget cuts. Democratic candidate for Governor Tony Evers introduced a new plan for Wisconsin yesterday called Government for Us. Fewer than half of Wisconsin students are scoring high enough to be considered proficient in math and reading. Former President Barack Obama yesterday endorsed 260 candidates from across the nation in the upcoming November election, including several here in Wisconsin. Governor Scott Walker and Senate Majority Leader Scott Fitzgerald announced an extraordinary session of the Wisconsin legislature to vote on an incentive package for the Kimberly-Clark Corporation. And Election Day is 5 weeks from today. For more information on where to vote and to see a sample ballot, go to myvote.wi.gov. For Real Resistance Radio, I'm Keith Gostad.
The following program is a presentation of DC Communications, LLC. Warning, you are about to listen to the greatest radio show ever. And due to contractual obligations and to shield our airwaves corporate licensees from any semblance of liability, responsibility, and gullibility, we must tell you the views represented on this show are not necessarily those of this station or its management. This radio show contains differing points of view on current political topics, and due to the nature of its contents, it should be heard by everyone. Thank you for listening. Now live from the heart of liberal Wisconsin, where the political party is just beginning, welcome to the Devil's Advocate Show. Best friends proving it's never personal, only politics.
Please allow me to introduce myself.
Now here are your hosts, Dom and Crute.
Welcome back. Hour 2 of the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. And Dom, I think this is bound to be a big hour later. At the bottom, we've got Scott Ross, Executive Director, One Wisconsin. Now, we're going to talk about an extraordinary session Republicans are calling in the state of Wisconsin. But first, a fine guest right now live via phone. He is Josh Kaul. He is a Democrat. He is candidate for Wisconsin Attorney General. Josh, welcome back to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show.
It's good to be back. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Well, Josh, I got a concern, sir. We're getting quite late. Today, 5 weeks from the general election, from the midterm elections, from your election, I hope, to the office of Attorney General in the state of Wisconsin. But, Josh, the only polling I've seen so far has got you trailing Brad Schimmel, and I find him completely unpalatable. So, Josh, how are you going to increase your brand awareness? I see that you're on a justice tour. Can you tell us about that? Is that part of getting the word out about Josh Kaul?
Yeah, we were in Milwaukee yesterday for a press conference with John Chisholm, the district attorney in Milwaukee County, as well as Ernell Lucas, Milwaukee County's next sheriff, talking about the kind of change that I want to bring to the Wisconsin Department of Justice. Today we had a press event in La Crosse, and we're going to keep traveling around the state talking about the issues. And, the AG's race is one where, certainly we need to keep working to increase my name ID, but Brad Schimmel was rated favorably by less than a quarter of Wisconsinites in the Marquette poll that came out a few weeks ago. So it's a race that I think is still fluid, and we're going to keep working hard between now and Election Day.
And what sort of changes do you propose for the Department of Justice? Let's share some with the audience, Josh.
Well, fundamentally, we need an attorney general who's going to fight to protect Wisconsin families and not somebody who far too often sides with special interests. I think we need new leadership when it comes to fighting crime and getting justice for Wisconsinites. We have an opioid epidemic that's been devastating for families across Wisconsin. We had nearly 900 opioid-related overdose deaths last year, and we have a meth problem that has gotten much worse. And we need to start responding to that like the crisis it is, which to me means ensuring that our enforcement efforts are targeting large-scale traffickers, also expanding access to treatment so that people who are addicted to drugs are able to get the help that they need to get back on their feet. And finally, electing an AG who's going to be serious about, or electing an AG who's finally going to be serious about holding the pharmaceutical companies accountable for the role that they've played in this epidemic. Our AG also mishandled Wisconsin's backlog of untested rape kits. He received millions of dollars to test those in his first year in office. But after he had been AG for 2 years, only 9 of the more than 4,000 kits that needed to be tested had been tested. And while progress has finally been made, the result of our AG's mishandling of that backlog is that justice has been delayed for survivors and that dangerous criminals have remained on the streets longer than they should have. We need an attorney general who is going to make getting justice for survivors of sexual assault a priority. And there are a number of other issues, which I'm sure we'll get into, but there's a very clear difference in this race between Brad Schimmel and me.
Now, you talk about the actual duties that Brad Schimmel apparently is not completing to the satisfaction, I would say, of most of Wisconsin electorate. Things like cleaning up the backlog. I know he now claims that he's cleaned up that backlog, but it took him years, and it certainly didn't show a lot of urgency to stand with the victims. But I would contrast that with where he seemingly puts his priorities. Josh, Brad Schimmel has enjoined a lawsuit to fight back the fight back the ACA, to fight back Obamacare. If he gets his way and is successful in this litigation, he effectively will eliminate protections for pre-existing conditions in the state of Wisconsin. So I guess here's how I turn this into a question, Josh. Should the Attorney General of the state of Wisconsin be worried about enjoining national lawsuits, or should he be worried about being the top cop here at the DOJ?
So first of all, our AG's top priority has to be public safety here in Wisconsin. Now, when there are laws or policies that are adopted by the federal government that are harmful to Wisconsinites and that are unconstitutional or illegal, stepping up to take action is appropriate. And so when net neutrality was eliminated, for example, more than 20 AGs challenged that action. I called on our AG to join that challenge, and his response was to say that that challenge was frivolous, which I disagree with. But here, we're talking about, with the Affordable Care Act, policy that is helpful to Wisconsinites. If this suit is successful, as you mentioned, protections are going to be eliminated for people with pre-existing conditions. The health insurance companies would once again be able to deny coverage to a person on the basis of a pre-existing condition. And young adults would lose the guarantee that they can remain on their parents' coverage until they turn 26. So this lawsuit is not in the interest of Wisconsinites. If it's successful, it's going to be harmful to Wisconsinites. We should be doing the opposite. We should be working to expand access to health insurance coverage and working to reduce costs. And as Attorney General, I would seek to withdraw the state of Wisconsin from this lawsuit.
Now, let's talk about what you referenced most recently, the opioid and pharmaceutical manufacturers. And there have been a number of counties, including Milwaukee County, that are suing pharmaceutical manufacturers, Josh. Do you believe that in joining a lawsuit or opening a lawsuit on behalf of the state of Wisconsin, do you believe that would be the proper use of the resources of the Department of Justice? Do you think we as a state should be suing pharmaceutical companies, sir?
It's now 71 out of 72 counties, I believe, in Wisconsin that are suing in connection with the opioid epidemic, suing pharmaceutical companies. Several states have gotten involved in lawsuits, and the good news is that our Attorney General has at least moved in the right direction. In late 2016 or early 2017, he was saying that he didn't think the statute of limitations could be stretched back far enough to hold the pharmaceutical companies accountable. Since then, and since this campaign got underway, he's announced that he's part of a multi-state investigation into the actions of the pharmaceutical companies. But he's also taken campaign contributions from PACs for pharmaceutical companies, and I don't think has demonstrated any commitment to being serious about holding the pharmaceutical companies accountable for their role in this epidemic. What I would do as AG is, first of all, look at the multi-state investigation and see exactly where it is, and if it's moving along as quickly as it should be. If it is, I think we should continue down that route, and if it's not, then I think the AG should look at potentially bringing a lawsuit against pharmaceutical companies to the extent that they played a role in this epidemic.
Folks, you're listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show on Real Resistance Radio. That is Josh Kaul. He's a Democratic candidate for Wisconsin's Attorney General. He joins us on the phone. Josh, of course, the news of the week, Judge Kavanaugh and the testimony of Dr. Ford alleging that she was assaulted by Kavanaugh when they were both teenagers. Republican Attorney General, the current Attorney General Schimmel, waded into this topic and seemed to be doing some victim blaming. You want to get your thoughts. His quote is this: "I worry that the way this has been turned into a political football, that we might be set that back, that might have survivors of sexual abuse look at this and say, wow, I don't want to become part of that. I don't want to get caught up in this kind of mix." What's your take on Schimmel's impression of how this case is impacting perhaps women coming forward and discussing and charging and standing up for themselves in these sexual assault cases?
I think that Dr. Blasey Ford and all survivors who come forward and speak out are courageous for doing that. They should be supported, and I think that when people come forward, it is helpful. I disagree with Brad Schimmel on this, and a report I saw recently indicated that the number of people who have been coming forward has increased. So I think he's just wrong about that. Brad Schimmel also said that he didn't know whether something that happened 36 years ago should prevent someone from ever serving. And if somebody committed sexual assault 36 years ago, they have no business being on the United States Supreme Court, and our chief law enforcement officer needs to know that.
Brad Schimmel has also come out recently and discussed and made his employees sign non-disclosure agreements. It seems a little redundant. I understand there's already some laws on the books about what folks in DOJ can discuss in the different departments. Josh Kaul, if you are the next Attorney General, what's your position on NDAs?
The Attorney General needs to be a leader when it comes to transparency in government. The AG's office has an Office of Open Government, and this is the opposite of that. The AG should be setting an example here, and unfortunately, that's not what we saw here from Brad Schimmel. This is not the only time that he has not been on the side of open government. You may remember that when he attended a conference held by a group, he was a panelist at a conference held by a group that's been identified as an anti-LGBT hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. He indicated in an email that he didn't want the conference agenda to become public. So we need somebody who's going to be an advocate for open government in the AG's office and who's going to be an example.
Well, Josh, did you think the timing conspicuous? There were 129 holdouts that had not signed the NDAs, employees of the State Department of Justice, and there was an email sent out from the boss, apparently on the very same day that the Edwall tell-all, Unethical, was released. Josh, it seemed conspicuous, the timing. How about your opinion, sir?
The timing of it is a question you'll have to ask Brad Schimmel, or that somebody will have to ask Brad Schimmel. But again, as you mentioned before, there are rules in place regarding what state employees can disclose and what needs to be kept confidential. So this non-disclosure agreement, it doesn't seem to be serving any real purpose other than sending the wrong message. The message we should be sending is that transparency in government is encouraged.
Josh Kaul, a fine candidate, a Democrat running for Wisconsin's Attorney General. I'm praying to God for you, Josh. People want to get involved in your campaign. Do more than thoughts and prayers. How can they get involved? How can they find you online, sir?
They can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Josh Kaul, JoshKaulWI, and our website is joshkaul.org.
Josh Kaul, thank you so much for joining us here on the Devil's Advocates. We'll catch up with you a few more times, I hope, between now and Election Day.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Josh. Folks, we are the Devil's Advocates. Phone lines open. We've got all the employees here on NDAs, so there are certain things they're not going to be able to talk about. But I feel unrestrained. I'll say whatever the hell I want to say to you and about Brad Schimmel. And he's a hack. He's awful.
He's terrible. The worst attorney general ever.
844-967-2789. You know we're right, Republicans. You don't like him either. Come back with us. More Devils. You're listening to Real Resistance Radio. Time for a 420 break.
Will there be a lawsuit? Yeah, probably.
We have to bring back law and order.
I don't even know my own website address.
As unions create the highest standard in wages, health and welfare, retirement security, and workplace protections. Hello, this is Tom Bennett, President of Teamsters General Local 200. Your voice is your strength. The ability to build a stronger and better tomorrow begins today. Teamster Local 200 represents workers in numerous industries, and our team is ready to sit down with you and your co-workers to build your unified team. Call Teamsters Local 200 at 414-771-6363 or visit us on Facebook or www.teamsterslocal200.com.
I'm Andy Buck, Field Representative with Painters and Allied Trades of Wisconsin. It's an issue that brings constant challenges for building contractors. How to find qualified painters, glazers, and drywall finishers. IUPAT knows what you want. A professional job performed by skilled workers who care about safety, training, and finishing strong. Workers who are reliable and ready on demand. Let IUPAT provide the people power that you need. You'll feel confident the job is finished right. Connect at IUPATDC7.com and finish strong.
Man, do I love card night. You ready, boys? You got a king?
Go, fish dad!
Oh, come on. This is WWE superstar Titus O'Neil. It only takes a moment to make a moment. Take time to be a dad today. Learn more at 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov.
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
The Resistance is live 7 days a week here on Real Resistance Radio. Tune in Sundays for Meet the Press with Chuck Todd from 11 a.m. to noon. Then it's the Best of the Forum with Sherwin Hughes from 12 to 3 p.m. And Citizen Action's Battleground Wisconsin rages from 3 to 4 p.m. Get your groove on with Stu Man PM, Politics and Music 4 to 6 p.m. with Stu Daniels. Mandatory listening, always streaming at realresistanceradio.com.
The Devil's Advocates, because it's always 420 somewhere.
Welcome back.
And we are back from the 420 break. Thank you so much for listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show. Eager Beaver Crudy over there. He's also with me. We're streaming on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter at Devil Radio. And we always got phone lines open, especially a couple for the Republican trolls. You're welcome anytime. 844-967-2789.
Dom, I was so eager to thank our last fine guest, Josh Kaul, Democratic candidate, Wisconsin Attorney General, and remind people, stick around, more fine guests coming, including Scott Ross, Executive Director, One Wisconsin Now, going to talk about extraordinary session for corporate welfare for Kimberly-Clark. But Dom, first, a John Nichols piece at the Cap Times, the topic Brad Schimmel is Donald Trump's bitch. I mean, Attorney General. I read from the piece. President Donald Trump does not get along with Attorney General Jeff Sessions. The two men were close when Trump was campaigning for the presidency as an anti-immigrant, anti-refugee xenophobe, since Sessions has devoted his legal and political career to dividing Americans along lines of race, ethnicity, gender, and sexual preference. But Sessions has not proven to be sufficiently loyal to Trump, especially when it comes to shutting down inquiries into Russian interference in the 2016 election. So, the president regularly trashes on the Attorney General of the United States, but at least Trump has Brad Schimmel. The Attorney General of Wisconsin is an all-in Trump man who refers to his office as a strong partner with the Trump administration. It's hard to argue with Schimmel. Last year, he spent a weekend at Trump's Mar-a-Lago Club, a nearby resort, joining $125,000 donors to the Republican AG Association for the lavish good times. Trump and donors have every reason to be happy with Schimmel, who has played a leadership role in advancing a lawsuit that is designed to overturn key sections of the Affordable Care Act. At the same time, Schimmel has refused to join responsible attorney generals in suing to block the administration's lawless assaults on refugees, immigrants, and communities across the country. Schimmel's loyalty to Trump was on full display last week when the Attorney General was fretting about the circumstances of Brett Kavanaugh, Trump's embattled Supreme Court nominee. Schimmel has been advocating for Kavanaugh since July, when the president nominated the Bush administration political operative for a place on the high court. The controversial nominee was tripped up when Christine Blasey Ford said she was sexually assaulted by Kavanaugh, however, and then several more women came forward with allegations. Kavanaugh denied all wrongdoing, at which point allies of the administration rallied to try and save the nominee. Schimmel took to the task enthusiastically. The Associated Press reported that on the day Ford testified to the Senate, Wisconsin's Attorney General was asked if he still thought Kavanaugh deserved to be a Supreme Court justice. Schimmel responded that Kavanaugh is as qualified as any judge in the nation and has served honorably as a federal appellate judge, Dom.
The Attorney General, who has faced sharp criticism for the slow work of the state crime lab on evidence of sexual assaults and other crimes, then mused about the fact that Ford said the attack occurred in the early 80s when she was 15 and Kavanaugh was 17. Quote, I don't know what's true about these allegations or not, and I don't know if something happened 36 years ago that should prevent someone from ever serving, unquote. Schimmel, who griped that the confirmation process had been turned into a political game. He also claimed, I worry that the way this has been turned into such a political football that we might set that back, that we might now have survivors of sexual abuse look at this and say, wow, I don't want to become part of that. I don't want to get caught up in that kind of mix. That statement stirred outcry. Here's a quote from Democratic Party of Wisconsin Chair Martha Lanning. Dr. Blasey Ford and all women who stand up and share their stories are courageous. Brad Schimmel's comments claiming that their courage could cause other women to stay silent is disgusting and a vile way to discourage other victims from coming forward. Schimmel's challenger in this fall's election, former federal prosecutor Josh Kaul, recent guest here, summed up the sentiments of advocates for assault victims when he said, any suggestion that the women who have come forward with allegations about Kavanaugh could discourage others from coming forward is offensive. It is striking that a state attorney general, especially one who is seeking re-election in a volatile political year, would respond to the Kavanaugh controversy in the way that Schimmel did. Presumably, Donald Trump was impressed, however, and that seems to mean a lot to Brad Schimmel.
Sure does. Come back with us. Another fine guest joins us live via phone. It's Scott Ross, Executive Director, One Wisconsin Now, talking about what the Senate Republicans here in the great state of Wisconsin are doing. They're calling it extraordinary session, Dom. More corporate welfare to give, but after the election...
Well, we're not fixing the roads?
No sessions for that.
No education policy, no road policy, no pre-existing condition policy, but we're going to give Kimberly-Clark some money?
$100 million in an extraordinary session. Come back with us. We got extraordinary guests like Scott Ross in the 5 o'clock hour, Dr. Tim Slecker, and Justin Morales. And, of course, you on the phones always at 844-967-2789.
Bring on through, bring on through, bring on through, bring on through. Hey, hey.
is not a credit to law enforcement, that I can tell you.
Give me a break. We cannot arrest everybody that somebody thinks is dangerous.
I don't have a lot of expertise.
Join the resistance against dirty carpets. Call Zero Res Madison today for our summer special. Clean and sanitize 3 rooms for only $139. Call 608-848-9000 or schedule online at ZeroResMadison.com. Zero Res, spell it forward or backward, it's the right way to clean.
Indoor baseball, anyone?
Most party fouls are pretty dumb, but if you decide to drink and drive underage, you could lose your license and your freedom. Learn more at ultimatepartyfoul.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
The Resistance is live 7 days a week here on Real Resistance Radio. Tune in Saturdays for Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk with Dr. Tim Slecker, 11 a.m. to noon. Then it's the voice of the voiceless, champion of the working class. Earl Ingram's Saturday show is live from 12 to 3 p.m. From 3 to 4, it's State Rep Joe Costa Zamaripa hosting The Joe Costa Show, followed by The Dawn of the Resistance with Maggie Dawn, 4 to 6. Mandatory listening, always streaming at realresistanceradio.com. You are listening to Real Resistance Radio, WRRD 1510 AM Waukesha and WTTN 1580 AM Columbus, always streaming at realresistanceradio.com.
Hi, my name is Shantae, your local Hyatt pharmacist. With more than 10 locations here in the Milwaukee area, we're here to simplify your lives one script at a time. With free delivery to your home or work, where all your medications are brought together in one convenient dosage packaged, individualized to your daily medication regimen. We set up in-house calls with the licensed pharmacist to assist in medication management. We accept all insurance plans. To learn more about Hyatt, visit us at our website, HAYATRX.com.
Do you own a rental property, or would you like to partner with a rental investment team? Call the pros you can trust at CCL Management. Rental expertise second to none, a general contractor on staff to direct repairs and improvements, and real estate brokerage services tailored to the small investor. If you're ready to invest in rental property or just need professionals to manage your real estate portfolio, call us, CCL Management, at 608-833-0009 or visit us on the web at cclmanagement.com.
On marijuana, unfortunately, as a public health issue and a public safety issue, I've opposed that.
Dr. Sanjay Gupta, how can medical marijuana help those addicted to opioids?
There's 3 big things. There's clear consensus now that cannabis can treat pain. That is not an opinion. That is a consensus conclusion by big scientific bodies like the National Academy of Science. We also know that it can help treat the withdrawal symptoms of opioids. People, they don't want to be on them anymore. They want to quit, but they develop the terrible withdrawal symptoms. And now we have evidence that it can actually help heal the part of the brain that is diseased in someone who's an opioid addict. If you had to start from scratch and design a substance to help lead us out of the opioid epidemic, like in a lab, it would probably look very much like cannabis.
Call Governor Scott Walker at 608-266-1212. Tell him good people do smoke marijuana. This message was paid for by the People for People Corporation. Donate online at p4ppc.org, p4ppc.org.
For Real Resistance Radio, my name is Keith Gosted. Democratic candidate for governor Tony Evers introduced a new plan for Wisconsin yesterday called Government for Us. Evers said he wants to make state officials more accountable to voters and called for establishing an inspector general to serve as a watchdog for state government. Evers also said he wants to implement nonpartisan redistricting and automatically register people to vote when they turn 18 or when they move to Wisconsin. Evers said he wants a nonpartisan commission to draw congressional and legislative districts with no consideration for the party affiliation of the voters or who won in previous elections. Tuesday, cloudy, highs around 60. Tonight, mostly cloudy, lows in the upper 50s. Wednesday, mostly cloudy with a slight chance of rain, highs in the upper 70s. Thursday, sunshine, highs in the upper 50s. For Real Resistance Radio, I'm Keith Gosted.
The Devil's Advocates, political commentary from the back of the class.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. Got a fine guest. He's joined us here in the back of the bus. He's our friend Scott Ross. He is the executive director of One Wisconsin Now. Scott, welcome back to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show.
Hey, kids, what's happening?
Buddy, it's just another day at the office for us. And for apparently you and all the fine researchers over at One Wisconsin Now. this extraordinary session the Republicans are calling for, Scott, they want to issue more corporate welfare, this time to the Kimberly-Clark Corporation. But we saw your organization reporting yesterday, Kimberly-Clark has effectively paid no taxes in 4 years. Oops, let me correct myself. They paid $1 in state taxes in the last 4 years. I didn't even have to verify this information. If it comes from you, Scott Ross, I believe it.
Oh, golly, that's kind of you. Yeah, we got the records for the last 5 years of Kimberly-Clark's taxes paid because we wanted to confirm for ourselves. But yes, in fact, for the years that they have, they paid zero net income tax here in the state of Wisconsin in the last 5 years. Sorry, again, as you said, they paid $1, which is almost worse.
I mean, $1, literally $1, an even dollar. How does that work?
You know what? You have to ask Scott Walker.
Rounding error.
He's done the tax cuts for the wealthy and for corporations, and this is what you see, where you have a company with a gazillion-dollar company who is basically saying we're going to leave the state, and so we want to fleece election year Scott Walker, the master negotiator that he is, and this is literally what Scott Walker has negotiated and is trying to sell. We would give this company, which has paid $1 in net income tax the last 5 years, over $100 million in additional handouts, right? We'll be cutting checks to them since they don't have a net tax to pay. And for that benefit, they will close a plant here and kill over 100 jobs. So, again, Scott Walker, they're like, hey, come on, Scott, let's get you on this one. And that's what he is. That's currently the snake oil of which he is selling.
Scott Ross, I try not to do math on the radio, but I got to ask you, if this Kimberly-Clark corporate welfare matches the incentive being offered by Foxconn, if the state of Wisconsin is offering 17 cents on every dollar of wage to be paid to the employees that are retained, these aren't even new jobs, these are retained jobs, but if we're paying 17 cents on the dollar and the maximum Wisconsin state income tax is like 7.5%. Scott, we could do this math into infinity, and we're never going to get paid back. There's never going to be a garnered benefit for the state taxpayers if we pay out at 17% and we collect it back from the wage earners at 7.5%.
Yeah, no, I think you are. You've done what I can't do, which is even a preliminary math. I mean, but you hit it on the head. Like these incentives. It has been proven time and time and time again. Don't know how many times it has to be proven that just giving corporate handouts does not create jobs. It doesn't raise wages. All it does is fatten the coffers of those at the top and the people who own the companies. And we get stuck paying for it. It's twofold, because not only do taxpayers in Wisconsin get stuck paying the tab for this, but then we've got these jags in the legislature who will come back and say, well, we can't afford to pay for anything else. It's kind of like, Paul Ryan after handing out $1.5 trillion of tax cuts. He says, well, entitlements are the problem. That's why we have to make, we don't have any money, so we're going to have to cut grandma's Social Security benefits and your Medicare benefits because entitlements are what caused us to hand out $1.5 trillion to rich people like Donald Trump, And the thing about it that's even more offensive, if you think about it, is that they paid $1 in net tax. It costs $50 to $80 it will cost the state $50 to $80 to screen all of those 100 workers for drug testing required under Scott Walker to get unemployment benefits. So these workers, in a way, will be subsidizing their own, their own firing, and it's just appalling. I mean, it's just literally appalling. And until we get some leadership that just does not hand things over, we're gonna continue to pay the price. And what I mean, we are going to continue to pay the price.
No, Scott, my understanding is they don't even have the Republican votes to pass this grandiose incentive package to a corporation that pays no taxes in the state of Wisconsin. Let me ask you, my big buddy, what about the timing of this? if this is such a gotta-do-it extraordinary session kind of thing, why not do it prior to the midterms, prior to defining what the people of Wisconsin will elect in the fall by doing this in the lame duck session? Effectively, don't Republicans shield themselves from any liability, any harm that might come to them through the electoral process, more corporate welfare that the taxpayers of Wisconsin may not want to foot the bill for, Scott?
Absolutely, and I mean, this again is Scott Walker is hemorrhaging votes in the Green Bay media market, and he will not win re-election if he doesn't get at least 54 to 55% of the total vote in the Green Bay media market. That is a big, that's a large chunk that he's got to get, and so he is trying to cobble everything that he can with duct tape, with Band-Aids, with spit, and, with $100 million of our tax dollars. And you're exactly right. They literally are putting us in a position where, who knows what's going to happen in the state legislature? Who knows what's going to happen in the governor's race? We could literally be coming back to to one, two, or three of the basically the entities that would be voting on this or signing it into law as not being, as having been ousted from office, but in that lame duck session. And I think that's just absolutely ridiculous. And, it comes down to this, guys, it comes down to this. They want to try and protect Roger Roth, who's the Senate president, who is in the Fox Valley, Senate race. And nobody, it looks like a lot of the Republicans from around the state are no longer willing to carry water for Scott Walker, and they feel like that Roger Roth is expendable, and they'll just have to win a seat somewhere else in order to keep the majority. And I think that's kind of comical because it's literally you see the stock that Walker has had and the unity that the Republicans had as having, I mean, it used to be just enormous. They would do anything for each other, and now, it's completely and totally gone, and it's basically every person for themselves on the Republican side. And, there's three things that Scott Walker has always had, his three biggest strengths. First is his fundraising prowess. Well, we saw that he wouldn't have outraised Tony Evers the last month if he hadn't gotten $1 million from Rebecca for Reals out of her campaign account. Second is the idea that he's strong. Well, Donald Trump has turned him, has turned Wisconsin's top dog, into somebody who rolls over, plays dead, and fetches for him. And then third, the Republican unity. And now that seems to be the last thing that is cracking in terms of the three strengths that Scott Walker had. And that could be disastrous for him and for the rest of the Republicans because everybody knows Scott Walker looks out for only one person, and that's Scott Walker. And if it comes down to whether or not they have to jettison Roger Roth in the Senate majority so that Scott Walker thinks he might be able to hang on to the governor's mansion, he'll try and hang on to the governor's mansion. And this is going to be an interesting time, to say the least. And again, it comes back to this. Scott Walker wants us to give $100 million to a company that has had $1 in net tax income the last 5 years, and they're going to close a plant and kill 100 jobs to boot.
Folks, you're listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show on Real Resistance Radio. That's Scott Ross, our pal and executive director at One Wisconsin Now. Scott, Kimberly-Clark has done this once already. Back in 1985, they moved their corporate headquarters from Neenah, Wisconsin, down to Irving, Texas, presumably, I guess, from the tax situation. And now they're a $40 billion, if you look at the market cap for Kimberly-Clark online, they're a $40 billion market cap. And last year, they made over $2.3 billion of net income. Net income. This is not a broke corporation. I guess my look at, regardless of what happens with Roth up in that area, in the Fox Valley, certainly Walker needs Fox Valley. And the reason perhaps this comes after the election is he needs those workers. He needs the supply chain. He needs everybody involved who could potentially be hurt by this move to vote for him. Hey, vote for me, we'll keep your jobs. Whether or not they may or may not want to vote for Walker, all of a sudden they're held captive to Governor Walker and the Republicans, that if they don't vote for him, perhaps they'll lose their jobs. What is the appropriate response, do you think, for the Democrats in this situation? If the Republicans fall to a blue wave, how should Governor Tony Evers handle Kimberly-Clark and other corporations like them who threaten to move their operations?
I think that you have to negotiate hard. And you can't just hand over the store. I mean, the problem is that Scott Walker is the one who set the precedent. Yeah. And if I were Tony Evers and if I were to win this election, if I were to become the governor, I'd say Scott Walker is no longer the governor. And this is the way we're going to do things. We're going to negotiate in good faith. If you want the largesse of the people of Wisconsin supporting you financially, then you're going to have to make some concessions. And the concessions are going to be that the workers are going to be paid well, that they are going to have the ability to unionize if they want to. All those sorts of important things that make a highway, because the last thing we want to do, and this is the thing that's so bothersome about Walker, is that we basically are paying companies to create more, strain on the social safety net, because if you're not paying people enough, it's that whole Walmart thing, right? Of like Walmart for years and years was the number one, and they still may be now, but they are the number one company who had employees on Badger Care because they don't pay their workers anything, because they don't provide any kind of health care. And so taxpayers were having to subsidize not only the tax incentives, but also the cost of the workers who got to work there basically as, state-sanctioned indentured servants. And that's where I think you have to go. Like, I'm not opposed to talking to companies about, ways in which to, ensure that everybody is treated fair, because there is always going to be an Alabama. But unfortunately right now there's always going to be a Wisconsin, is what people are saying all over the place, because Scott Walker is a desperate career politician who has spent his entire adult life running for office or being on the state dime. He doesn't know anything else. He's a terrible governor. The only thing he's good at is campaigning, and part of that is selling off to his to campaign donors as much as humanly possible. We've seen it time and time and time and time again. And the thing that's bothersome to me is that, there's about, I want to say, $14 to $15 million just on TV supporting Scott Walker, right, over the last several months. And you know darn well that some of that money is coming from Foxconn to some of these independent groups that don't have to disclose where the money comes from. And there is nobody in the press who is asking about that, asking about where is the Foxconn money, because there is no way on God's earth that Scott Walker handed $4.5 billion to a company and they're not somehow paying him back so that he can get reelected, because this is the only reason we're shelling out the $4.5 billion to begin with, is to try and save Scott Walker's political bacon.
Hey, Scott Ross, our pal from One Wisconsin Now, your organization, were the first to report, I do believe, Scott Walker's abuse of the state airplane. And my understanding is the Democratic gubernatorial ticket, Tony Evers, Mandela Barnes, they're doing a little, Facebook live show today covering the ground. One of the shortest trips Governor Walker utilized the state plane on, Appleton to Green Bay, won't be a long video, maybe 20 minutes or so. Scott Ross, obviously, this is an issue still out there. Scott Walker still hopping the state plane whenever necessary to get around the state and campaign. You talked about right immediately before the special election in the 1st Senate District, Scott Walker in the Green Bay market every day, a week straight on the taxpayer dime. Scott Ross, any thoughts today about Scott Walker and his abuse of the state taxpayers using our plane?
Well, yes, and thank you for pointing out it was a comprehensive project of One Wisconsin Now and our research director Joanna Beilman-Doolin, who got the records and then processed the records, and then her and her team cross-referenced. And what by team, let me say a couple people, right? We're a tiny little operation. But processed the records, looked at social media, found what Walker had put out in press releases, and was able to track basically, here's where Scott Walker went all of these times and for how much. And it turns out that from the day after he dropped out of the presidential race back September 22nd, 2015, where his approval rating was at 37% because he had abandoned us, he spent the next 3 years basically trying to rehab his image by using the state plane as his personal campaign vehicle. And he logged, over 115,000 miles, almost 1,000 flights at a cost of $930,000 to taxpayers. And that was one of those things that Tony and Mandela were talking about today, was the fact that some of those are so incredibly short. And we listed just some of them. And if your listeners want to go to onewisconsinnow.com .org/air, AIR, you can see our in-flight magazine we created for Scott Walker's thing that includes, things like when he took, we called it flights that are too short for beverage service. Now, I know we all know that we could probably get beverage service in 24 hours, especially if we're motivated, but Appleton to Green Bay, 24-mile flight. Kenosha to Milwaukee, a 24-mile flight. Green Bay to Shawano, a 29-mile flight. Madison to Watertown. I mean, who the hell flies from Madison to Watertown? Waukesha to Lake Geneva, Madison to Baraboo, Oshkosh to Green Bay, Madison to Janesville. Well, actually, I would fly Madison to Janesville because, 39 is such a disaster because he abandoned the project. Those are some of the things that Walker did. I mean, it's not the only abuses with the plane. I mean, he took, we documented, Scott Walker spent $2,000 of our money to fly the state plane to Rhinelander so that he could film television commercials, and that is a violation of the law, 100% dead to rights. If the DA in, Dane County did anything, he might take a look into this. We've requested it to be looked into, not once, not twice, but 3 times. Them and the election commission, that he and the election commission should investigate what is so very clearly, according to the statutes, criminal wrongdoing by the governor of the state of Wisconsin, who utilized the state plane for his political campaigns. I mean, there's literally a section in the statutes that we cite that talks about travel. When you use travel and there is campaign work, you have to pay at least 50%. Scott Walker did not do that. We are stuck with a $2,000 bill, $2017 bill, because he flew a plane 350 miles from Madison to Rhinelander and back. That's just, those are some of them. We all know the one. I mean, this is the one that I love the most. He had a plane pick him up, an empty plane fly to from Madison to Milwaukee to pick him up after a haircut. The irony of that.
Scott Ross, has the DA from Dane County responded to your requests in any way?
No, he has not. And
And what's his name again?
To say the least, Ishmael Ozan.
Ishmael Ozan. Okay, that's right.
Scott Ross, our good buddy, Executive Director, One Wisconsin Now. We're all out of time, Scott, but I got to say this one last thought. Scott Walker wouldn't take the plane every day, except every time he goes out in the driveway, the state fan's missing because Matt and Alex are out moving somebody. Scott Ross, our good buddy, thank you so much for joining us here on the Devil's Advocates today, sir.
All right, you guys be good.
Thank you, Scott.
No promises. Come back with us. Join us on the phones. You are next at 844-967-2789.
Having a great time.
As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly.
I'm a peacock! You gotta let me fly!
I'm an Eagle Scout.
Hey everyone, it's your nominee for Lieutenant Governor, Mandela Barnes. I know I don't need to tell you what's at stake with this election, but I want to talk to you about my friend and running mate, Tony Evers. Now, I've gotten to know Tony over the last couple months as we've crisscrossed the state. I've seen his resolve and his dedication to solving the problems Wisconsin faces, especially when it comes to access to quality, affordable health care, protecting our environment, and making sure that every kid in Wisconsin has a great public school, regardless of their zip code. But Tony and I can't win this election alone. We need your help to talk to those that might still be on the fence. So whatever you can do will help. Knock on doors, talk to your neighbors, talk to your family. When we're fighting to take back the state from Scott Walker and the special interests, every little bit helps. You can make the difference in this election. So visit TonyEvers.com and sign up to help. It's time for a change. And that's why Tony for Wisconsin paid for this ad.
I am sick and tired of big power brokers telling voters what's important instead of the other way around. So I joined the Citizen Action Organizing Co-op. It's a community of like-minded local progressives where the members help determine what issues are important. And with the aid of professional organizers and some of the top progressive strategists in Wisconsin, we make the powers that be take notice and action. We're working on fair elections, the climate crisis, immigrant rights, electing progressive candidates, and more. Plus, we have a campaign called Radioactive that supports this station and Real Resistance Radio. So, come help us reclaim our power as voters.
Become a member of the Citizen Action Organizing Co-op. Go to citizenactionwi.org.
Years old, I am divorced, and I live in a van down by the river.
And we are back. Thank you for listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show on Real Resistance Radio. You can jump on the horn with us here, toll free, talk or text the party line, 844-967-2789.
Dominic, want to thank our good buddy Scott Ross, Executive Director, One Wisconsin Now. Got some fine guests coming up in the happy hour. Dr. Tim Slecker, he's the Dean of the School of Education at Edgewood College, and Justin Morales, he is the Wisconsin State Director of the American Federation for Children. I'm going to talk about some new testing and the results here in the state of Wisconsin. A little bit abysmal, but we'll save that for the 5 o'clock hour. Dom, there's some breaking, extraordinary, super-duper good news.
Ooh, what's that, Crudy?
A week from tomorrow.
Yeah.
Mike Pence coming back to the great state of Wisconsin. He's going to campaign on behalf of the gubernator, and he's going to do so. Guess where they're going, Dom?
Waukesha?
Green Bay.
Of course, Green Bay.
According to the Associated Press, Vice President Mike Pence will visit Wisconsin next week to help raise money for Gubernator Scotty Wanker's bid for a third term. Pence will host fundraisers in Green Bay and Eau Claire on October 10th, according to the AP. Pence's visit comes as Walker and opponent Tony Evers, the state schools chief, are locked in a tight race, with some polling showing Evers leading the two-term governor. Now, I'm going to stop right there for just a moment. What polling is showing Scott Walker leading Tony Evers? I've yet to see a poll, at least since the primary was determined, that showed Scott Walker in the lead. I'm just saying. In its latest fundraising report, Walker raised slightly more than Evers in August, but it has a much larger supply of cash in the final weeks of the campaign. Let's not forget, Walker raised $2.3 million minus the $1 million given to him by Rebecca Clayfish's campaign, meaning he raised $1.3 million, while Tony Evers raised $1.9 million in August, Tom. But the Wankinators got $4.2 million in the bank as of the end of the month, according to his report filed late in September. Tony Evers has just $1.6 million on hand. The announcement of Pence's visit comes a day after former President Barack Obama endorsed Tony Evers and a string of other Democratic candidates seeking state and federal offices. Let's not forget, he also endorsed Tammy Baldwin. And tomorrow's big guest, live in studio, Randy Bryce, Dom, also garnered himself an Obama endorsement. I got to say, Randy Bryce has got the rare daily double. He got the Bernie Sanders and the Barack Obama.
Crudy, also breaking news, we mentioned and discussed the New York Times article about Donald Trump and the Trump family finances.
The tax fraud perpetrated by Trump.
Journal Sentinel has an article from, this is written by John Campbell, New York tax regulators are reviewing possibly fraudulent tax activities involving President Donald Trump and his family that were detailed Tuesday by the New York Times, according to the state. A spokesman for the State Department of Taxation and Finance said the agency was aware of the allegations and vowed to pursue any investigations necessary. The tax department is reviewing the allegations in the New York Times article and is vigorously pursuing all appropriate avenues of investigation. Agency spokesman James Gazal said in a statement, under state law, the tax department has the authority to investigate alleged tax fraud, but would have to refer any findings to a prosecutor if it found any possible criminality.
Dominic, it would take a blue wave and a win back of the House by the Democrats, and then we could force Trump to release his taxes. Well, we got Randy Bryce coming in tomorrow, and we got Dan Cole. He's going against Clinton Grothman. Ma, the meatloaf.
Ma!
Dan Cole will be our guest in studio on Thursday. Sort of a congressional week. Had Mark Pocan yesterday. When's Gwen Moore coming on?
Got to reach out. She's due.
Yeah, reach out. I would say past due. Come back with us. More Devil's Advocates, the happy hour, including our good buddy, Dr. Tim Slecker, Dean of the School of Education at Edgewood College, and Justin Morales, State Director, American Federation for Children.
I don't give a rat's behind because I'm moving in. I'm sick and tired of living in a van down by the river.
No, I'm going to stay for a while. How about that? Freedom.
Brad Zog, owner of Zero Res Madison, resisting dirty carpets and harsh chemicals. Brad, why should people use Zero Res Madison?
Why wouldn't you clean your carpets like this? We're not using any soaps. We're not using any chemicals. We cost about the same as the other guys. You look at it and you go, where's the downside? You got a completely green clean. It's awesome. We guarantee it. There's no downside.
There's no downside. Use Zero Res. Call Zero Res today. 608-848-9000. Zero Res. Spell it forward or backward. It's the right way to clean.
Do you love public education? Do you want to support your schools? Then you should support the people who make them work. You should support teachers and their unions. Teachers' working conditions are students' learning conditions, and when the school bell rings, it is crucial that teachers do not check their rights at the door. The ability to organize and advocate around issues that improve the quality of a teacher's workplace will increase opportunities for students and make schools safer for everyone. Stand with teachers, stand with WEAC Region 7.
You are listening to Real Resistance Radio, WRRD 1510 AM Waukesha and WTTN 1580 AM Columbus. Always streaming at realresistanceradio.com.
The Kavanaugh probe, Trump's wealth. I'm Ann Cates. Washington is standing by as the FBI continues to look into sexual assault allegations against Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. Correspondent Sunland Serfati reports his accuser has not heard from agents.
As Capitol Hill really waits on bated breath tonight for the results of this FBI investigation, the news is indeed that as of right now, Christine Blasey Ford's team says that they have not been contacted by the FBI in this supplemental investigation that's taking place.
The New York Times is reporting that President Trump engaged in suspect tax schemes and received at least $413 million in today's dollars from his father's real estate empire. Times reporter Russ Buettner.
We developed sort of a network of sources through which we obtained more than 200 tax returns eventually that were filed by his father and his father's businesses over the years, and general ledgers and banking statements that really provided a very firm factual underpinning for what we concluded.
A lawyer for the president says there was no fraud or tax evasion. 4 alleged members of a militant white supremacist group have been charged in connection with last year's deadly rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. Correspondent Laura Garrett.
Cole Evan White, Benjamin Drake Daly, Michael Paul Mazelis, and Thomas Walter Gillen. And according to the federal complaint unsealed there in the Western District of Virginia, these individuals were among the most violent individuals there at the protests in Charlottesville, and they were seen on video punching, kicking, headbutting people.
2 pieces of mail delivered to the Pentagon mail facility have initially tested positive for ricin. The 2 suspicious envelopes were addressed to Secretary of Defense James Mattis and to Chief of Naval Operations Admiral John Richardson, according to CNN. On Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 128 points. The S&P closed down 1. The Nasdaq off 38. I'm Ann Cates.
In-person absentee voting is now available in the state of Wisconsin. I want to encourage you. Go vote early. September 24th, voting begins in Milwaukee. Check with your city clerk to find out more. Vote now because you never know what might come up on Election Day. Secure your vote early. The more people who vote early, the easier it will be on Election Day for voters who can't. So go vote, Wisconsin. The polls are open now. This message brought to you by our friends at Wisconsin Voices.
Do you own a rental property, or would you like to partner with a rental investment team? Call the pros you can trust at CCL Management. Rental expertise second to none, a general contractor on staff to direct repairs and improvements, and real estate brokerage services tailored to the small investor. If you're ready to invest in rental property or just need professionals to manage your real estate portfolio, call us, CCL Management, at 608-833-0009 or visit us on the web at cclmanagement.com.
Hiring sites with over 1,000 reviews.
Most people with a mobile phone that's on and within range of a cell tower are going to get a text message from the president tomorrow.
The first nationwide test of the National Wireless Emergency Alert System was postponed last month because of the widespread impact of Hurricane Florence. But at 2:18 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:18 a.m. Pacific Time, cell towers will broadcast the test message for about 30 minutes. It will be headlined Presidential Alert, saying this is a test in all caps and concluding with no action is needed. All meant to answer a changing landscape in which not everyone would hear or see an emergency alert coming to them by radio or TV. I'm Jan Johnson.
Delta's shares have fallen 3% after the airline said it took a $30 million hit from Hurricane Florence and is paying more for fuel. Last month's hurricane caused at least 3,500 flight cancellations. I'm Ann Cates.
Have a drink at Regano's Roman Coin. This neighborhood corner tavern is as classic as the street it occupies. Family owned and operated since 1966, Regano's Roman Coin is located in a former Pabst Tide House on historic Brady Street, serving an array of craft beers with a focus on Wisconsin breweries. Also, weekly drink specials, trivia on Wednesdays, seasonal sporting events, parties hosted for all occasions, and pet friendly. Open 11 a.m. Tuesday through Friday, 10 a.m. Saturday and Sunday, closed on Monday. Regano's Roman Coin, Milwaukee's pet friendly, cash only order in classic corner tavern.
Live via phone, he is former U.S. Attorney Jim Santel.
Firing Bob Mueller doesn't mean that the prosecution, the investigation goes away. Pardoning one individual does not mean that you undo everything that has been done before. So this notion that somehow by shutting down and by pardoning and by sort of stopping the process, you're also stopping the wheels of justice is simply, again, it's simply wrong.
The Devil's Advocates, weekday afternoons on 1510 a.m. Wisconsin's Resistance Radio.
For Real Resistance Radio, my name is Keith Gosted. Democratic candidate for governor Tony Evers received a presidential endorsement yesterday. Former President Barack Obama released a statement saying Evers would put ordinary citizens ahead of special interests. Obama said, quote, Tony is focused on his positive vision for Wisconsin and the issues that matter most to hardworking families, like protecting people with pre-existing conditions, fixing Wisconsin's crumbling roads and infrastructure, and fully funding public schools. Governor Walker and Senate Majority Leader Scott Fitzgerald announced an extraordinary session on the Wisconsin legislature to vote on an incentive package for the Kimberly-Clark Corporation. The session will take place the week after the November election. The package would provide tax breaks for the corporation that would keep the plant open in Fox Crossing. The tax breaks for Kimberly-Clark could cost taxpayers up to $100 million. For Real Resistance Radio, I'm Keith Gosted.
The following program is a presentation of DC Communications, LLC. Warning, you are about to listen to the greatest radio show ever. And due to contractual obligations and to shield our airwaves corporate licensees from any semblance of liability, responsibility, and gullibility, we must tell you the views represented on this show are not necessarily those of this station or its management. This radio show contains differing points of view on current political topics, and due to the nature of its contents, it should be heard by everyone. Thank you for listening.
3, 2, 1.
Now live from the heart of liberal Wisconsin, where the political party is just beginning, welcome to the Devil's Advocate Show. Best friends proving it's never personal, only politics.
Please allow me to introduce myself.
Now here are your hosts, Dom and Crute.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. Dominic, we are sliding into the 5 o'clock happy hour, and I'm happy to announce this hour is all about the kids, Dom. We got a fine guest right from the top. He's our friend, Dr. Tim Slecker. He's the Dean of the School of Education at Edgewood College in Madison. He's also the host of Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk Saturdays, 11 to 12, right here on Real Resistance Radio. Dr. Tim, welcome back to the big show.
Man, thanks for having me back finally.
Yeah, thanks, man. Always love talking to you.
You act like we've been avoiding you or something, Tim.
No, it's a good day, whatever. But no, I'm glad to be back. Lots to talk about, right?
Well, let's start with the big elective cycle. Obviously, we're in the midst of an election and education, a big issue this year. We've got the education governor, Scott Walker, and the superintendent of the Department of Public Instruction. They are sort of intrinsically linked on issues of education, to my opinion, Tim. But we've also got headlines today. Less than half of Wisconsin students in grades 3 through 8 are proficient or better in English and math. And, you know, I'm not saying I'm proficient in English or math, but I got to tell you, a percentage of like 40% statewide, that seems abysmal to me, Tim. Is this an indication that we are underperforming as a state educationally, sir?
We're performing just about where we've been performing for the past 25 years. So anybody that thinks this is news is just trying to recycle some type of scare tactic. It doesn't mean that I'm advocating that it's good news, but to frame it as news would be an absolute preposterous lie, because they're the same results we continue to get time and time again, because we don't do anything about our reading and math and social studies problems. We just test them. And when you test the problem but don't do anything to the problem, every year you get the same results back that tell you you have a problem.
Well, first and foremost, Tim, let's get it out there on the record. You, sir, my friend, you're not a big fan of the testing, the standardized testing, things like the forward exam that's being administered to Wisconsin, 3rd through 8th grade students. Tim, what's your opposition to testing? Why shouldn't we have a metric of proficiency?
I've got actually, people might be surprised. I'm okay with the metric of proficiency. I have a problem when the metric for proficiency is constantly used as a battering ram to say something's wrong. Typically, teachers in public schools are the reason why the scores are the way they are, when the reality is the metric, we continue to use the metric, the test, like you're just saying, Mike and Dom. We use a test, we buy a test, we spend money on a test, and we never do anything that actually has anything to do with why we get the results on the tests we actually do. So what I'm not a proponent of continuing to spend money and force kids to take tests where we already know the results, because we haven't done one thing to adjust for the reasons why they're scoring so poorly on the test.
Well, Tim, let's also talk about one of the quirks of the metric, the opt-out quirk, as I see it, meaning simply that parents of Wisconsin students that would have their children opt out of the test, well, they're effectively marked not proficient for failure to take the state-administered test. So if 3% of the student body chooses, parents choose to opt them out of the test taking, and that's not out of line with a lot of districts, Tim. Someone at 50% is suddenly at 47% proficiency, or more accurately, a district would be marked down to 3% of those that opted out. Tim, are we seeing a big movement to opting out from people that you or others have encouraged to skip these exams?
I wish that were the case. I wish the opt-out movement were one of the biggest reasons why we could actually show how ridiculous these tests are. But sadly, that's not the case. People just aren't opting out. I think the opt-out is less than 1%.
Folks, you're listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show on Real Resistance Radio. Dr. Timothy Slecker, Dean of the School of Education at Edgewood College, joining us on the phone. All right, Tim, apparently your opinion is we're not really addressing the underlying reasons why these tests are resulting in essentially the same over the past couple of decades. Now, one could look at this and say, well, the kids just need to study harder. If you're getting a B, then you should put another hour of studying a day in, and perhaps you'll get an A. Is it that simple, or what are the fundamental problems as you see them, Doctor?
Well, it's actually not that simple. In fact, we've ramped up more instruction time in reading. We've ramped up more instruction time in math. We've, quote, made things more rigorous, and we continue to get the same results. The underlying issue, which continues to come out that nobody wants to deal with because the answer to this problem is incredibly complicated. But the fact is that poverty is predictive of test scores almost on a one-to-one basis. So whether we're going to deal with the effects of whether it's hunger, whether it's homelessness, whether it's trauma, whether it's any of those issues, whether it's not having books at home when between birth and 3 years old, all of those issues, if you don't want to address any one of those issues, you do not need to continue to give a standardized test because you will get the same results over and over again. Those are the only things that will make a difference is when we adjust for and give kids the ability to enter school with the knowledge and the profound types of nutritional, medical, you name it, they need to start school and then be able to be supported throughout schooling. Nobody wants to address that issue, though, because as somebody will say, well, Tim, we can't cure poverty. And so we're just going to continue to test kids and we're going to blame teachers forever because we can't fix a reading disability is hearing loss. The biggest cause of hearing loss is ear infections between birth and 3. The biggest reason why you have hearing loss is because you don't have adequate medication for birth to 3 for people in poverty. There, you want to raise your reading scores?
Poverty and all the things that were related to it are outside government. Is there cooperation? Is there competition for limited resources? Certainly, the educators themselves cannot address those issues. That's going to take other legislation, other types of efforts. How do you see the government in the state of Wisconsin working in that regard?
Not well. In limited resources, but if we're talking about doing something to that.
Folks, you are listening to the Devil's Advocate's got a good friend and a fine guest, Dr. Tim Slucker, Dean, School of Education at Edgewood College, also the host of Busting Pencils, 11 to 12 a.m. Saturday mornings right here on Real Resistance Radio. Tim, I got to ask you, disparities between white students and African-American students and Latino students, and these are some of the most disparate outcomes, at least on testing of proficiency in the nation, Tim. I believe in the Madison School District, quoted at themadison.com, 61% of white third graders in the district tested proficient in English or language arts, but only 11.6% of black students and 13.2% of Hispanic students scored the same. Tim, does that mean that effectively the entire population of students of color in Madison schools are coming from substandard economic circumstances? Are they all coming from poverty, or is there a differential in treatment of these students once they get to school, Tim?
There's a significant population of people of color coming from poverty. Absolutely. Of course, no. When you make a sweeping call that does everybody, no, they don't. And in fact, when you look out and in fact disaggregate on poverty and then add race, you'll find some interesting statistics. But you're asking about, though, are there other issues? And I will say that, yeah, when we look at the teaching of certain minority students, does the curriculum serve them well? Do we have a curriculum that meets them where they're at? Is it interesting? Are we working within the frames, which we talk about this from truly an educator, and this would require reducing the class size and giving the teachers the ability to meet with students individually and work with them where they are. We could do a lot better. That would be one help when we're talking about looking at the, quote, achievement gap that really is an opportunity gap. It's poor. We don't use the resources we need. We don't address the issues, though, that we talk about. We've got a system of education that continues to show this person of color achievement gap, and people need to start asking questions about what is it about the system that continues to cause this. Absolutely, poverty is a contributing factor, but what is it about the system that also is not relevant? And so here's where we start talking about where we really start need to look deep at the curriculum. And there's a great book out right now that I'd like to push. It's called Teaching for Black Lives, that actually looks at and says, if you're going to teach purposely from a frame of equity, here's how to do some things differently. that would be one start to help us move in a direction that would give us some equitable education as opposed to just giving everybody the same damn test.
Tim, we know that we've got choice schools in the state of Wisconsin in the Milwaukee market where we broadcast from. I mean, 30,000 students approximately are in the voucher, are in the choice schools. Tim, first and foremost, my understanding, this forward exam is now been extended to students of choice schools. What does the testing tell us, Tim, and do you draw any correlation between the fact that, you know, we've got such a large choice program and certain amounts of funds are being diverted away from the public schools? Tim, do you see any correspondence or correlation with the choice program and the outcomes on this testing?
Yeah, it's actually pretty remarkably similar to the state. Once you adjust for the test takers' economic and socioeconomic status, choice schools have no difference, and in fact are starting to show that some choice schools actually do worse than public schools when we make sure that we're comparing, as they say, apples to apples. And so if we're going to look at a student in a choice school, we have to have a comparable student from a public school to make those test results truly apples to apples. When we do that, the choice program doesn't do anything except, as you said, divert money away from public schools. The other sad part about the choice schools, though, is that 70% of the students taking advantage of the vouchers were already in private schools to begin with. And so the idea that this is some escape route, no, this is a subsidy for mostly white people to continue private education for their privileged Kavanaugh kids.
And my understanding, you know, we know, Tim, that Governor Scott Walker is an advocate for choice schools. He's the one that expanded the Milwaukee choice program statewide. Tony Evers, in contrast, Tony Evers doesn't seem to be a fan of quote-unquote choice schools, but Tony Evers is not advocating for the elimination or the stopping. I think he's described it as too disruptive to the students. So, Tim, choice schools are going forward regardless of the electoral outcome this fall.
You know, getting Tony in there, we know what happens with Walker. We continue with choice. Has Tony profoundly come out? No, but is he able to be moved? Is he moving in that direction? Can there be a push in that direction? This is where we then, as the civic voters, not just our votes, but now it really matters not just who wins, but once they get in there, hold their feet to the fire and make them move on issues that matter. And right away, if Tony Evers is elected, this is going to be then for people who are opposed to choice to really put the pressure on him to make a move, because the idea that we're going to strand 30,000 kids is just insulting to the public schools of which they left, because the public schools that are out there are ready, and in fact, you know, they're the ones that will take those kids all the time, every time. So the idea that there are going to be 30,000 kids walking around without a school, that's silly. Instead, let's make sure those 30,000 kids go back to amazing public schools.
Dr. Tim Slecker, Dean of the School of Education at Edgewood College, and more importantly, as far as I'm concerned, the host of Busted Pencils every Saturday morning, 11 to 12. Tim, I can give you 30 seconds. What's happening this Saturday on the big show?
This Saturday, we're probably going to be looking at one more little weekend, bringing back, taking a look at the whole idea of teacher shortages. I don't think people have had enough time to digest that, and we've got some new guests lined up and a whole bunch of new shows coming then out after next week. So we're going to go back to the teacher shortage, run that back through, make sure people understand that we, quote, don't have a shortage. We have a problem with teachers leaving the classroom, and the best thing we could do is make classrooms a place where teachers want to stay. And we might give you some great insights if you listen to the show.
Saturday, 11 to 12, Busted Pencils, Dr. Tim Slecker. Thank you so much. More Devils on the other side.
This is a house of learned doctors.
We need to let people know, you come into our schools, you're going to be dead.
Here in the Badger State, we have our own expressions. When we're looking to go on vacation, we state, well, let's go up north. Hello, this is Tom Bennett, President of Teamsters Local 200. Here in the Badger State, we also have another expression, union yes. The strength of the labor movement depends on elected officials here in Wisconsin and Washington, D.C. that support the values of working families that raise the standards for all. Give us a call at Teamsters Local 200 at 414-771-6363 or visit our website at www.teamsterslocal200.com or on Facebook at Teamsters Local 200. Be engaged.
Take a look under your bed. Find stuff under there? What about jobs? No? Now try your basement. There's a pair of overalls that overall you're not so into anymore. A perfectly good laptop that hasn't sat in your lap in months. And even more stuff, but still no jobs? Well, you really have both. See, stuff is defined as household articles considered as a group. Sometimes this stuff is no longer needed. Wait, no longer needed? That can't be right. Because remember those jobs you were looking for? Those are really needed, and they're the stuff inside your stuff. Even inside that winter coat that moved with you to Phoenix. Our job is to unlock those jobs, and it starts when you donate your stuff to your local Goodwill. Here's how we do it. When you donate to Goodwill, we sell your stuff to provide job training for people right here in your community. So just by teaming up with Goodwill, you help create jobs. And isn't that worth parting with the leftover keytar from your 80s cover band? Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs. Find your nearest donation center at goodwill.org. A message from Goodwill and the Ad Council.
It's a lot easier to measure how many times students use a semicolon correctly in an essay.
Educated educators talking education.
Than it is to measure how many wonderful ideas are in that essay.
Busted Pencils.
There is no teacher shortage.
With Dr. Tim Slecker.
There is a teacher exodus.
Featuring Matt Damon's mom.
You want to know what my mom would say?
We've had an intrusion into education.
Busted Pencils Radio. Where?
And we are back. Thank you for listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show live on Real Resistance Radio. If you miss any of this fine program, please go online to realresistanceradio.com. You can download and listen to interviews and podcasts.
Dominic, I want to thank our most recent guest, Dr. Tim Slecker, Dean of the School of Education at Edgewood College in Madison. Also, host of Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk right here on Real Resistance Radio, Saturdays, 11 to 12. That is a smart program. I try to catch it each and every week. And coming up soon, Dom, we got Justin Morales. He is the Wisconsin State Director of the American Federation for Children. Now, we're going to hear from the school choice movement next, Dom. But I got to ask you, standardized testing. My kids have been taking the standardized testing. And I got one kid that excels at standardized testing, and I got one kid that's busting the curve in the other direction. Yeah. I mean, if you added up their percentiles, they'd probably literally together, cumulatively, come to about the 100th percentile. One's at like the 98th and one's at the 2%. I'm not sure that the testing is really reflective of the intelligence of either of my children or the competency. Now, one does very well on standardized tests. One does very poorly. I don't think one's a genius or a super genius, and I don't think the other one is, beyond learning.
Well, being skilled at taking a test is a skill in and of itself. There's pressure.
I was pretty good as a test taker.
I used to take tests for people. I remember the Iowa Basics test when I was a kid, and when I first, sometimes I was just like filling in the ovals because I'm like, this is stupid. I'm rebelling. So no, my test scores sometimes were not indicative of my intelligence, perhaps. Now
that's why you didn't get into law school.
Come on, I took the LSAT twice. But my daughter, when she was very young, the first time she took one of those tests, didn't do well at all. Now, come to find out, she didn't quite get the concept, and it wasn't a learning disability issue. It was just that she wasn't down for the testing. Now, she's gotten better over the years, no doubt about it. But no, certainly it's a point in time, but there's also many, many variables that go into it. I'm not a huge fan when I was taking them, but, what do I know? I'm just a dumb radio guy.
My son's 12 percentile improvement year over year seems unexpected and unlikely, predicated on hard work. I suspected one day he probably ate breakfast. The other day probably didn't. Welcome very soon, Justin Morales, Wisconsin State Director, American Federation for Children. You're listening to the Devil's Advocates. This is Real Resistance Radio.
If there's one thing I've learned in life, it's that learning things never taught me nothing, and books is the worst.
Wile E. Coyote, super genius.
Join the resistance against dirty carpets. Call Zero Res Madison today for our summer special. Clean and sanitize 3 rooms for only $139. Call 608-848-9000 or schedule online at ZeroResMadison.com. Zero Res, spell it forward or backward, it's the right way to clean.
This message is for all of you sitting in the passenger seat. And apologies if it gets a little uncomfortable. But how does it feel to be at the mercy of someone who thinks a random text is more important than your life? Someone who takes their eyes off the road while speeding along in a 3-ton hunk of steel. Freaky, right? Well, why not just ask them to stop? Or better yet, volunteer to text for them. It might be a little awkward, but believe me, you'll live.
Learn more at StopTextStopWrecks.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
5nines, your local single-source IT solutions provider. Specializing in cloud technology, consulting, servers, networks, and hosting. We manage your IT so you can focus on running your business. Enjoy technology. Enjoy 5nines.com.
Here's how you get them. If someone invites you for a cocktail, you bring them beer. If someone invites you to dinner, you bring a casserole. That's how you make friends. That's the Wisconsin way.
Hi, Resistance Radio listeners. This is Kim Schrader, the president of the Milwaukee Teachers Education Association. We are the 4,600 educators who make Milwaukee's public education system possible. MTA members are the guardians of public education because every single day we are fighting to strengthen and protect public schools our students deserve. MTA educators are leading the fight in Milwaukee public schools for smaller class sizes, more recess, physical education, art, and music opportunities for every child in MPS. MTA educators are the champions for healthier school meals, positive discipline practices, equitable schools, and schools that partner with parents. MTA members are the guardians of public education, and we are proud to teach all children, regardless of their zip code. To learn more, follow us on Facebook at the Milwaukee Teachers Education Association.
Have you outgrown your house? Are you sick of apartment living? Not ready to buy but know you need to move? Hi folks, this is Tom Hartman for CCL Management in Middleton. You should consider moving up to one of the finer rental homes CCL Management represents. Unique houses and condos, always clean, most are pet friendly. Visit cclmanagement.com today to find your new home. CCL Management, Dane County's premier leasing and property management company.
Call CCL Management at 833-0009. That's 833-0009 or visit cclmanagement.com today.
The Earl Ingram Show. Join me at a new time, weekday mornings, for the Earl Ingram Show, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. on Real Resistance Radio, Monday through Friday, and as always, Saturdays noon to 3. The Earl Ingram Show, streaming live at realresistanceradio.com. Don't miss it. Voice of the voiceless, champion of the working class, the Earl Ingram Show.
I'll tell you what's going on.
For Real Resistance Radio, my name is Keith Gosted. The Brewers beat the Cubs at Wrigley Field yesterday 3-1 in Game 163 showdown. With that victory, the Brewers claimed the National League Central title. The Brewers will next play on Thursday night in Game 1 of a best-of-5 National League Division Series at Miller Park. Their opponent will be either the Cubs or the Rockies, whichever team wins the wild card game tonight at Wrigley Field. Yesterday's win was the 8th in a row for the Crew, who won 28 of their last 38 games. Former President Barack Obama yesterday endorsed 260 candidates across the nation in the upcoming November election, including several here in Wisconsin. Obama endorsed Senator Tammy Baldwin, candidate for Congress Randy Bryce, and several candidates for state legislature. Cloudy today, highs around 60 tonight, mostly cloudy, lows in the upper 50s. For Real Resistance Radio, I'm Keith Gosted.
The Devil's Advocates. They refuse to do math on the radio.
It's not so much that we refuse to do math. It just seems like we're incapable. Welcome back to the big show. The happy hour continues. Another fine guest has joined us in the Brady Street studio. I'm in the broadcast bunker, but Justin, you'll make do without me. His name, Justin Morales. He is the Wisconsin State Director, American Federation for Children. And, Justin, you and I have been on, I hate to call it a debate platform. But you and I, we've had these conversations about school choice. I don't mean to mischaracterize, but AFC, effectively, you folks stand for the choice schools here in the state of Wisconsin. Is that a fair assessment?
It is, and I just want to say thanks for having me back. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to talk with you guys. And yes, we are focused on empowering parents and making sure that they have the opportunity to do what is best for their child.
Justin, we know in the Milwaukee media market about 30,000 former NPS students are now, over the last 25 years, currently enrolled in choice school programs. How big has the choice program grown statewide, if you know?
It has grown substantially since its inception back in 2013. So you're pushing over 4,000 students now, gaining on 5. So that starting from 500 all the way up to 5,000 just over the past few years, it's an indicator that school choice is certainly working for those families and that there is a thirst and a desire for it.
Justin, what about the criticism? Friends of ours like Dr. Tim Slecker, well, he points out 70% or perhaps more of the students that currently take advantage of the choice programs were already public and to the private. What do you say about those ratios?
Well, let's start with the two separate questions. The first is that you, not you, but the doctor before and many others suggest that 70% of these students were already in the choice program. And that is the case in the very first year. And if you think about how this all started, school choice expanded statewide late to early summer, right around June. Schools are already in a private school would have immediate access to that information. So you see a high initial number for the very first year. There's a couple things that are very important to note with that, though, is that this program to send their kids to a private school, and all but one of those who are surveyed were attending school on a scholarship already, which means that they weren't already paying for that program. What that did is free up additional finances and allowed for those schools to provide more opportunity for poor and financially challenged families to attend their school. As you'll see over the next several years, that 70% number has dropped dramatically. It is now less than 20% of students were already private pay students, and you'll see as time goes on, that number will drop because there's a number of regulations in place that basically prohibit students who are already in a private school to attend. First, you have to be a switcher from a public to a private school, and there's entry limits. You have to be either entering in kindergarten, first, third, or ninth grade in order to attend the program.
Schools, religious schools. And do we know, is the giving been down? Religion's been taking a beating here. Look what's going on with all the archdioceses. Perhaps the donations are down. And in many ways, this money diverted from the public school for the purpose of education, going to these private religious organizations, seemingly backfilling what they're not getting when they pass the hat.
So with a voucher, there is stipulations on how that money has to be used. It has to be directly funded for education purposes. So they can't just take that to go and build out and expand their church, build a new rectory for the priests or whatever, some of these religious...
Well, sure, but it's replacing the funds or the assets or resources they're already applying towards that student.
Budget. Do you guys know how much it is per budget, roughly?
About $2.5 billion over 2 years, my last understanding.
It is $12.7 billion per budget. That's the entire education funding.
So what am I throwing out there? The state aid formula for the state's contribution?
Are you talking for vouchers? Or are you talking about for overall? Because overall, it is $12.7 billion is what the state puts in.
And what does that include? K through 12 and college, school, everything?
That includes essentially everything for education. The vouchers themselves make up 3.7% of the entire education budget. So you're not even talking 4%. If you take out all the Milwaukee students, which make up the biggest program, you're talking less than 1% of the entire education budget is actually going towards helping poor families attend schools that they would not otherwise be able to. And again, keep in mind, not a single family is required or they're not forced to attend these schools. So it is by their own free will and their own determination that they decide to send their family to those schools. So
now, Justin, I can appreciate the statistics when you broaden it out over a statewide, but when you're talking about the Milwaukee media market, you're talking about 30,000 kids, and relative to the school-age population, I mean, you're talking about a significant portion, 25-30% of all students are no longer in the public schools, they're in choice schools. Certainly, you're talking about a big impact mathematically, at least if we reference Milwaukee.
Locally, right.
If you reference Milwaukee, yes. And that is a large, substantial portion. But again, I go back to my point, and we can get into the data overall on the results and the success of the choice program. I can sit here and I can tell you today that I believe that the choice program is successful because each year, year after year, more and more families are sending their kids to choice schools. You see more high-performing schools seeing their enrollments grow than anywhere else. And it is indicative of the fact that parents want what is best for their child, and they're deciding to send their children to those schools on their own will.
Well, Justin, lots of people bought K cars too. I don't necessarily look at consumer sentiment as a reflection of what's best for the family, but let's set aside my opinions for a minute. Let's talk about quantifiable numbers, and let's talk about the Ford exam we were discussing with our friend Dr. Tim Slecker. Now, across the state of Wisconsin, public schools, less than 50% proficiency with students in third through eighth grade in either reading or math. Justin, my understanding, there's been lots of effort to seek accountability of the choice schools. So here's the question. Are the choice schools also now administering the forward exam to their students like the public schools?
Yes, they are. It is state law that these schools have to administer the forward exam to them. Now, just the same as there is in public schools, students have an opt-out clause, but as the doctor was saying beforehand, the opt-out clause or any of that is not necessarily a contributing factor of what the results of these numbers are. And again, I'm disappointed that the numbers reflect a serious issue, especially with racial disparity when it comes to overall performance and a substantial need to do better. However, there are positive signs, in particular when it comes to the choice program and having quantifiable metrics on overall performance.
Okay, sir. Now's your time to brag about the success of the choice program. Tell us, what are the proficiency ratings overall in the choice programs according to the forward exam, and how do they match up with equitable public school districts?
Once you account for poverty and like issues.
Well, here's the issue, and I have the numbers from the ACT because the ACT is something that these students also have to take, and it's something that we're all very familiar with.
And that is now mandated for all juniors in the state of Wisconsin, I believe.
Their financial peers, those who are on the same level as income, as the doctor again suggested that income is a direct contributor to how well they do on tests, was 15.5. Fully financially stable students was 16.1. So overall, they did better. Same for Racine, 19.4 for the Racine Parental Choice Program, 16 as a score, a composite score for the financially disadvantaged students, and 17.2 for fully funded students. Statewide program, 21 for voucher students, 17.1 for the financially equivalent, and overall for the state, 19.7, right around 20. So it shows modest gains for those who are participating in the choice program, and this is the third year in a row that you see that.
Now, I'm going to be clear. Was that 20 to 21 statewide, apples to apples? Is that?
Yeah, that's apples to apples. So you're talking.
Is that 1 point worth all the drama we've been going through, Justin?
I think, and I do, because again, these students who are receiving a voucher get right around $7,800, give or take a few dollars. That will go up over the next few years as you have more money per student. The average student in a public school is funded $10,000 or more per student. So you are actually seeing results that are overall better. And I agree that testing isn't the end-all be-all for a metric to judge, but when you compare that with parental satisfaction, growth in the program, there is a real need and a desire for these programs to exist.
Now, the voucher schools, don't have to take students. They can kick students out. They have, different reporting requirements, different teaching requirements, as far as I understand.
So it is state law, and I'll provide for some videos and some information that you guys can share for everybody here, that choice schools cannot pick and choose their students. They never have. They never will. They have to follow all federal safety and anti-discrimination guidelines, and that they cannot kick out students. It's state law. So they have to follow a whole taxpayer money and overall the best interest of the child, that these schools are being run efficiently, effectively, and well, because not only is it important to see testing metrics and overall academics, but you also want to see these schools run financially well, because both of them, the left hand controls the right. If they're not ran financially well, they're not going to be teaching the kids well.
Folks, you're listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show on Real Resistance Radio. That's Justin Morales in studio with me, Wisconsin State Director for the American Federation for Children. Justin, do we know, are there any statistics that you know of that would refer to and compare learning disabilities in the voucher schools versus the public schools as a percentage? And if there's a difference, would that not impact perhaps the scores?
Well, I think that there is a whole new look and a whole new understanding when it comes to special needs. The special needs scholarship was just instituted a few years ago. It dramatically expanded in the last legislative session, and you're seeing exponential growth just in the last few years. So these are students who have special needs that the private schools are taking, most of the time have taken all along, and that are somewhat equivalent to what they are in the public school. So we can have a full, long discussion on the special needs program. However, we can cover as many different topics as you'd like.
Well, Justin, here's a topic I'd like to cover. The difference, in no small part, that I see between the public schools and the choice schools is when operators come in that would be fly-by-night, and we've seen many examples of that in the Milwaukee area. We've seen these operators that come in, they're clearly doing it for profit, they're running their schools out of storefronts, and they close up in the middle of the night, and the MPS has got to accept those students back in. The money is gone, it's flown off to Florida, and there's no accountability. There's no way to claw that money back in most circumstances. Justin, is it, and I hate to say a few bad apples spoiling it for those that would do it right? And I have no doubt, and I mentioned this to you off the air earlier today, there are some choice schools that I'm very impressed by. I've been to St. Anthony's. I've seen the Carmen School. I think there are schools uniquely doing it better, but there are also fly-by-nights that are under the umbrella of the choice school program. Justin, if we don't see more from organizations like yours pushing back against the bad operators, how do we keep your group and the ones trying to do it right from being tarnished by the reputation of the fly-by-nights?
Well, here's a good thing that I think that we can all agree on, is that we do not want those type of schools. Back in 2011, you had one of those fly-by-night schools that set up shop in Racine, and before the year was even over, they closed up shop. And School Choice Wisconsin and a number of other advocacy groups said that this is not acceptable, and they work with the state legislator to make sure that it is much more difficult for new schools to enter the program. They have to abide by a number of financial regulations. They have to provide an surety bond so that if there is any problems with the school closing, that the school or the state is able to reclaim their money. And since 2013, you have not had a school close because of any financial issues. And that is a good thing, and it's good for the state, it's good for the program, and most importantly, it's good for the kids.
Folks, you are listening to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. Got a fine guest live in the Brady Street studios. He is Justin Morales. He is the Wisconsin State Director, American Federation for Children. He's brave enough. He comes down to face the music with the Devil's Advocates. Justin, more of Justin Morales and a few of your phone calls on the other side. Join us right now. One last segment today if you want to talk kids and education. It's all about the kids. 844-967-2789.
I always hear about the elite. You know, the elite, they're elite. I went to better schools than they did. I was a better student than they were. I live in a bigger, more beautiful apartment, and I live in the White House, too, which is really great.
Oh, good for you!
We don't need to imagine the challenges our state faces. We live them every day. This is former State Representative Mandela Barnes. I'm running to be your next Lieutenant Governor. And whether it's more access to affordable health care, or clean water, or better jobs, or wanting the best schools for our kids, there's only one candidate for governor who will get results: Tony Evers. That's what Tony's done as a teacher and as state superintendent of public schools. I've seen Tony's character and his passion to do what's right for kids. I've seen Tony Evers listen to the concerns and problems of people around the state, and I've worked with him to find solutions to those problems. Isn't that what we need? 8 years is enough of Scott Walker and his failed politics of division. We need a governor who cares about all of us. We need a governor who's concerned about the next generation, not just the next election. It's time for a change. That's why Tony for Wisconsin paid for this ad.
I'm Andy Buck, Field Representative with Painters and Allied Trades of Wisconsin. It's an issue that brings constant challenges for building contractors. How to find qualified painters, glazers, and drywall finishers. IUPAT knows what you want. A professional job performed by skilled workers who care about safety, training, and finishing strong. Workers who are reliable and ready on demand. Let IUPAT provide the people power that you need. You'll feel confident the job is finished right. Connect at IUPATDC7.com and finish strong.
Have a drink at Regano's Roman Coin. This neighborhood corner tavern is as classic as the street it occupies. Family owned and operated since 1966, Regano's Roman Coin is located in a former Pabst Tide House on historic Brady Street, serving an array of craft beers with a focus on Wisconsin breweries. Also, weekly drink specials, trivia on Wednesdays, seasonal sporting events, parties hosted for all occasions, and pet friendly. Open 11 a.m. Tuesday through Friday, 10 a.m. Saturday and Sunday, closed on Monday. Regano's Roman Coin, Milwaukee's pet friendly, cash only order and classic corner tavern.
The Devil's Advocates, radio for the 99%.
And we are back. Thank you for listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show on Real Resistance Radio. In studio with us, Justin Morales. He's the Wisconsin State Director for the American Federation for Children. And we got some callers. And Justin, thanks for sticking around, man. He's agreed to take some callers, so everybody be nice, be FCC compliant. Our pal Chris from Sun Prairie, you are up. Thanks for calling, Chris. You're on with Justin.
Hi, yeah. I've been a little incensed sitting here listening to what Justin's been saying, because I attended all the hearings for the school vouchers, and they're not accountable the way the public schools are accountable, and they can pick and choose their students. When they get if they kick a student out, the money stays at that school. It does not go to the public school, and then the public schools have to take on the students anyway without the money following them. So I just don't believe that what he's saying is true. And I also have a problem as a taxpayer who never had a problem with giving money to the public schools. If they want to raise my taxes to have better schools, I'm okay with that. But I have a problem with having my tax dollars go to religious education. I went all through private schools. My parents paid for it. I don't believe in the private schools anymore. I think that it's indoctrination. The people that talk about indoctrinating children in the public schools are actually indoctrinating them into religions, and we are supposed to have a separation of church and state.
All right, Chris, thank you. We got some other callers, but Justin, I want to give you an opportunity to respond.
Sure. I just wanted to respond to a couple things here. I would like for Chris to, share with us what are some of the accountability measures that she would like to see, because what I'll do for the station here is provide a whole extensive list of what all the voucher schools have to abide by. And the second thing
is it equitable to what the public schools have to abide by?
In many cases, it's probably more, because they have to abide by many of the financial regulations and reporting that public schools do not have to abide by. And secondly,
but Justin, she does speak truth in that I sat through a number of those committee hearings myself. There was real pushback. There was not the same accountability. So if the accountability has become equitable, Justin, that's something new. When the change? When did the choice schools become fully equitable, to your opinion, sir?
For years, since the last 20 years, they've been enhancing accountability measures to make it more accountable. Because again, the more accountable the program is, the more you'll see high-performing schools progress, and you'll have many more of the poor-performing schools squeezed out, which is ultimately a good thing for the kids. And let me just
come on, man! I haven't been doing this 20 years. I know it was more recent than that, but I'll let you continue, Justin.
So, and I just wanted to touch base on the religious education, the separation of church and state. It is a Supreme Court decision that has dictated that this is constitutional. And plus, there is a number of different federal, state, and social programs that allow for families to take taxpayer money and spend it how they see fit. You can take any type of food voucher or your WIC card and purchase the food that you would like and desire for your family. So,
well, don't tell that to Republicans, because they wanted to change that.
That's true. And what I would say to many of these families who say this is taken away from public schools, and it is an egregious thing to send money to a private school, would they be in favor then of taking away these taxpayer funds that help feed families? Because education is food for the mind, and it's important that they get everything that they need for their own best interest.
Justin Morales, I think that's about all the time we got for today. Wisconsin State Director, American Federation for Children, a fairly brave man. He joined us down in the Brady Street studios. Want to thank all our fine guests today. They included Attorney General candidate Democrat Josh Kaul, Scott Ross, our good buddy, Executive Director, One Wisconsin Now, and of course, Dr. Tim Slecker. He is the Dean of the School of Education at Edgewood College, and more importantly, the host of Busted Pencil's fully leaded education talk each Saturday right here on Real Resistance Radio, playing out 11 to noon. Thank you once again, Justin, for joining us here on the Devil's Advocates.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Do it again.
We'll do it again soon. We'll do it again tomorrow. Randy Bryce in studio. On Thursday, we've got congressional candidate Dan Cole live in studio. It's more big shows. You better tune in each and every day. 3 hours a day, that's all we ask. Devil's Advocates, we'll do it again tomorrow.
And the world will stand in awe.
It's so bad!
Brad Zog, owner of Zero Res Madison. Brad, why should people use Zero Res Madison?
Why wouldn't you clean your carpets like this? We've got a patented system. We also do another step that most people don't do. We have a double rotating brush machine that we use when we pre-treat the carpet. So this helps dig up any of that stuff that's deeper in your carpet that the vacuum doesn't get. We're going to provide that intermediary step before we clean with our empowered water.
Call Zero Res today, 608-848-9000. Zero Res. Spell it forward or backward. It's the right way to clean.
You're not wired to have a response to this sound. But when we introduce a new stimulus, Save the Food, we're helping to stop food waste. Save the Food. For tips and recipes, visit SaveTheFood.com. Brought to you by NRDC and the Ad Council.
180 over 111, and I had a stroke. I couldn't speak or walk.
This is high blood pressure. Get back on your plan. Go to loweryourhbp.org. Brought to you by the American Stroke Association, American Medical Association, and the Ad Council.
You are listening to Real Resistance Radio, WRRD 1510 AM Waukesha and WTTN 1580 AM Columbus. Always streaming at realresistanceradio.com.
The Kavanaugh probe, possible ricin mail. I'm Ann Cates. The FBI continues to investigate sexual assault allegations against Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh.
Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says here's what's going to happen.
We'll get a